Brad Lecter.
Yep.
What's up?
Lechler.
Yeah, Lechler.
Yes.
How
Yes.
did I pronounce it?
Lechler.
Lechler.
Yeah.
Got it. Brad.
Yeah.
Of Harpy Homestead, father, farmer, cannabis museum instructor.
Yes.
Yeah, happy to have you on, man.
Thank you so much.
Of course, of course.
Yeah.
And how did I meet you? I met you out at the Cannabis Museum. Like, I heard about the Cannabis Museum grow class from Adam Sheff, like, right before it happened. And then I popped out there, and that's kind of how I started talking to you. And you're the last one of all of the instructors to come through, so good to close that loop.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Perfect as we're closing up our classes right now.
Which was last Thursday was the potluck. That was super wicked.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I just, I want to say that big shout out and thank you to Kristen at the Cannabis Museum and Don E. Wershafter of the museum and Sarah Koya from Cool Digs, for putting that together because, at this phase and age of my life, I'm not really going out to meet new friends, so to speak, but I have gained lifelong friends from that experience.
That's awesome.
And I feel like that's what cannabis does for adults, is it helps bring their community together and gives us a talking point and something to share.
Yeah.
So.
And so there was like an outdoor last year, then you did an indoor before the second outdoor. Like, was this your third cycle of your own class? Are they going to do another indoor this winter?
No, we're not gonna do one this winter, but there's some other folks trying to figure out, some educational stuff to keep it going in town,
The Cool Digs on their Sunday shindig, right? Like they did a cloning workshop or like a trimming workshop and stuff. So.
Yeah, definitely Cool Digs.
Shout out Koya, yeah.
Yes, yeah. Always keeping the heat, keeping it current, keeping it moving, so and I'm I don't know, I kind of got into the teaching at the Cannabis Museum because I was going to start teaching a class. Ohio passed, it's almost 2 weeks maybe to, 2 weeks to the day when the state started trying to rechange the law. Yeah, I was going to say 2 weeks to the day that they passed the law, but that's not true because it was in December. And so I was looking to teach a class, get people educated on how to grow, being the first time Ohio could have home grow.
Yeah.
And a buddy of mine from Cincinnati that I went to college with wanted to go do a podcast at the museum. And so we went out and we were talking to Kristen, and she's like, hey, would you be into helping teach a class that we're going to have out here?
That's wicked. And
so I was like, yeah, I was just drawing up a class last night, thinking about trying to rent a space maybe at the Athens Library.
Wow.
And that was a recommendation of a friend of mine who teaches classes in there, and they've got a public use space that they'll rent out. And then I thought, well, how perfect to do it at the one and only Cannabis Museum.
Yeah. Did you know a lot of those people before the museum popped up, like Kristen and Donnie and all them?
Yeah. I've been here. I grew up in Whitehall, Ohio. It's like a suburb of Columbus.
Cool.
And then I moved down here when I was 18 to go to Hocking College for wildlife management and outdoor recreation. And at the time, it was like 2 years after Jerry Garcia had passed away.
Okay.
So all these deadheads ended up, I need something to do now. And a bunch of them went to Natural Resource College. So I landed there. And then just by the people that I met along the way, had a friend named Scott. And then that was started in the fall. And then that next spring, I went to a Hookahville, hookah concerts. Acoustic Hookah is like a big jam band that was super popular at the time. And they had a festival, like 3-day gig. And my buddy Scott rented a house from Donnie. And so he was like, oh, come meet my buddy, Don. And so that's how I got to meet the Wershafter, the owner of the museum. And just little things like that along the way, and friend of a friend knows this person, their name's Kristen. And my current wife babysat for them before we were married. So it's like, that little tight-knit community stuff, and so that's what I love about this place.
Yeah.
I love Athens for that.
Yeah. So you came to Hocking. Like, how did Meg's become like where you said at? That's where you're at now.
Yeah. We're our farm. It's a homestead, Heartbeat Homestead. It's outside of Rutland, Ohio, and just south of Albany. And
what is the definition of a homestead?
I don't know, like the definition, but
What are you
like
implying with the use of it? Yeah.
we live on and from our land, and we try to use our space on our land to generate as much of our economy and our food and our well-being
Hmm.
as we can, and try to have like a hub for ourselves while we're going through this life,
Yeah.
and a place to produce and a place to rest and nourish ourselves, and and kind of tie into that like old school thing, that everyone pictures on as a homestead. Like we've
Yeah.
got pigs, we raise chickens, we've got dogs and a donkey and greenhouses,
It's cool.
and and given the topography in Appalachia, we're rolling foothills of the Appalachian Mountains here. And so, like, we've got slope, which means, we've got water. So it's like we can do various things that we can possibly not do in a big flat
Plain.
area,
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Did you know that was like where you're ending up in life? Like it's like you go to college for natural resources. Like obviously, you're a guy with the elements, but like I mean, even when you came to Hawking, like if you weren't from around here, what made you stay? Did you leave after Hawking and come back, or like once you got into Hawking, like did you stick around Athens after that?
when I first got out of Hawking, I moved to Oregon,
Oh,
and ended up a friend of mine said that when he left Hawking, he was going to move to Eugene. And I had a friend who was in the backcountry horse program at Hawking,
mm,
and she ended up being a backcountry ranger in one of the biggest wilderness areas in Oregon.
that's
And
cool.
so me and a couple other friends went to visit her, and I was like, oh, I'm staying here. And like when I graduated high school, I guess I should say it's like when I graduated high school, I did the like epic road trip. I had my truck packed up like a week before graduation, and like 2 days after graduation, me and one of my best buddies at the time hit the road, and we went to Virginia first, or West Virginia, Shenandoah area, to visit his sister, and we were going to go to Arkansas to visit other family members of theirs, and then that got canceled, and my buddy's brother-in-law was like, hey, you should go out to Oregon. My brother's out there at this thing called a rainbow gathering,
Mm.
and I had no idea what that was,
Yeah, I actually don't either.
and so not knowing where I was going or what I was doing, he said, "Yeah, it's a bunch of hippies out in the woods hanging out, not charging any money, playing music,
Okay.
out in the national forest."
Yeah.
And we're like, "That's cool. That sounds fun. Where's it at?" He's like, "Oregon." And so we changed our plans from going to Arkansas and took a right and drove 3 days straight, got to Oregon. And so it ended up being that it was a rainbow family gathering, right? And so the rainbow family started in the 70s and like the Vietnam era and the protest era,
Mm.
and it was groups of people from all walks of life, Vietnam vets, protesters, looking to kind of create a community and focus on free necessities and just getting together and helping each other out and laughing and loving and playing, and that kind of reality
Yeah.
versus what was going on at the time.
Well, it's like interesting because like I thought that the Vietnam vets were like ostracized by the hippies, right? Like,
Yeah, for
so then to hear
sure.
that they were there, right? Yeah, it's
But
weird.
yeah, but there's that like that culture where it's like some of the vets, it's like you have different phases of that period of time where
Mm.
like the first phase of vets, they were drafted, like, and had no clue what was going on really. They were going to go fight communism. They didn't realize that the war they were really getting into.
It's about opium. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
they've got oil, they've got opium, same old, same old.
Hmm.
And so the purpose of the Rainbow Gathering was to kind of shed all those wounds and meditate on peace and move forward.
Word.
And so, we get there, and there's 30,000 people.
Holy
It
shit.
happened to be the largest one ever, and being mostly like hippies and commune folks and Hare Krishnas and Buddhist monks and like Native American shamans, and Oregon was a hot spot. So that's why it was like 30,000 people.
How do you even manage that logistically, fucking for free? You know what I mean? That's a lot of people to just be fucking hanging out in the woods.
Yeah, and it's like it's wild because there's a community community effort, community input. Like people go out. I learned all this after the fact, right? And people would go ahead of time and scout it out, find the springs where water could come from to support that many people, and then block those areas off so that people wouldn't camp in them, and put our people problems in the water, and designate areas for like heavy use, and and scout it out so that there wasn't like a huge negative impact.
Yeah, yeah.
And then after that going to a wildlife management school, then I kept going. I went for 7 years and straight, and then I've gone back here and there, and I started talking to the rangers because there's always rangers everywhere on horses, and I'm like, so what's the real ecological impact here? And most of the time they said there wasn't any really. I mean, because most of the areas were used for heavy grazing. So, like, for instance, we're in Montana, and it's way up in the mountains. It's all mountains there. And I'm talking to the rangers, and he's like, the day you guys leave, they're bringing 100,000 plus head of cattle in here.
Yeah.
So any kind of trampling around, or any of the common thoughts on like people impacts in the woods, and so
Not as bad as you'd think. Yeah.
Yeah, he's like, he just have fun,
That's what's up.
And so, there's like those experiences. That's, I guess that's where I met a lot of the folks that I know now, is like through that, and people that they knew, and you got to meet this person, or circumstances, or happenstance,
Yeah.
So that's where that kind of set my life moving in this direction, Like I was always, even though I lived in the city, like Columbus is like got 2 big rivers and then 4 really large streams, and then so those areas are wooded, and usually they've got parks by them.
Yeah.
So like me and all my buddies had canoes and kayaks, and we'd go, when we weren't doing normal kid stuff in the city, playing baseball or skateboarding or whatever, we'd go hang out in the creeks.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah. And that passion just kept moving forward. And then how I got into Meigs County was when I was 15, my dad and my uncle had a friend that was going to sell a place in Meigs. It was 36 acres. And my dad hunts, and my uncle hunted.
Cool.
And so they went and looked at it, and like, we're going to buy it. And so we all took a trip down to check it out.
Nice.
And that was kind of when I was like, oh, I want to live here someday, like just in general, because it was at the time, and it still is, but like at the time it was almost a forgotten part of Ohio. Like Old 33 was the only way in, and it was like 30 miles of the most curvy 2-lane road.
Yeah.
And, you've got to imagine like all the semi trucks and stuff that you see going down 33 in Athens at Richland Avenue, they bottlenecked into a 2-lane road.
Yeah, that's wild to think about.
And so it really it kind of cut society off from down there. So it was kind of like a frontier.
Interesting.
And, and having the college here, it provided a place to kind of go out and get away from the university life, but then also be able to lean on the university for like culture, experience, people, and like the economy of cannabis really got established because people could hide out down there.
Yeah.
And
Meigs County Gold.
Yeah.
I remember hearing about that in like elementary school.
Me too.
Yeah.
And that's what's funny. Like growing up in Columbus, like once you got old enough, people were smoking weed and that kind of stuff, and people would say, oh, down, past Athens, it's like they just grow like acres of it. And, you hear stories about like, don't go down there though, because it's like booby trapped and it's like Vietnam vets and like, and what I really come to learn and figure out and find was that was true. All that stuff was true, but it was like maybe from in the 70s, and maybe the early 80s.
Yeah, Leffingwell, Daryl Leffingwell. He
Hmm.
came on and was talking a little bit about how some of the strains from like Vietnam made their way back to Megs and shit like that. That's wild.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm real curious. You know, so our business, Heartbeat Homestead, um, we started out maybe since in the last 7 years we've worked with cannabis, and prior to that we started out, it was, we're looking for an economy, so we had to make a name, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to tell people who you are, what you're doing, and my wife came up with the Heartbeat Homestead, and it's heartbeat like
Two
beat
E's.
like the
Yeah.
vegetable,
Yeah.
and at first it was things from and for and from the homestead, and it was like a way to sell our produce, or my family is really into crafting, or fiber arts, and all the homesteady stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is like give ourselves a name, and then and so living in Megs and having the community that we have, I seen a niche to start providing agricultural inputs as well, because right after college, when I moved back to Ohio, I only spent about maybe 9 months living in Oregon. Then I came back to Ohio,
Gotcha.
and I needed a job. Started doing construction stuff for local companies, and then realized, I want to stick with the environmental things, and started working on organic farms.
Mm.
So I got a job with Shade River Organic Farm.
It's just like cold calling. You just like find a number. Hey, I want to come work for you. Like,
Yeah,
yeah. Okay.
yeah. And, it was always either that or a friend, we're, working with a friend, finding those jobs. And then,
Mm-hmm.
friend found one. Hey, can I get a job
Yeah.
too?
Yeah.
And so I worked for Mike Hamilton at Shade River Ag, or Shade River Organics. Sorry, there's a Shade River Ag as well here.
Mm.
And he's 8 or 9 acres of organic vegetables, plus 6 or 7 high tunnels,
Wow.
100 feet long, 30 feet wide, full
Damn.
of 780 tomatoes, but he used Ohio Earth Foods products, and Ohio Earth Foods is probably like a 40-year-old company now that is based out of Ohio.
They're like an amendments company,
Yeah,
like which is what you were just talking about.
yeah,
Yeah.
and their flagship product is a product called Revita, which is like a play on revitalize, and it's Ohio laying birds, which are egg producing birds, poultry manure, and then it's composted, and then it has other products added to it, and it makes a granulated fertilizer. So
Mm-hmm.
we use that at Mike Hamilton's, and I just remember him saying, "I just have to sell enough to pay for my fertilizer. I don't need to I don't need to make any money. I just got to break even, And so that's how, kind of thinking back on that and thinking like, well, we want to grow a bunch of stuff. We need to at least break even, and where we live in Rutland. There's probably 2 or 3 thousand acres of like-minded neighbors that probably have 10 or 15 different houses and homesteads. What everyone's got a name for what they,
Yeah.
what
Yep.
they call their place. And living 30 miles away from Athens, we just thought, hey, let's start trying to sell nutrients, and let's start selling granulated fertilizers, and see where it goes. And so we started doing it, and didn't take long. All of our neighbors started buying stuff from
That's
us,
what's up.
and we were kind of forecasting, hoping that Ohio would follow suit with cannabis, because at the time Colorado and California had already legalized, and
Recreationally specifically.
yeah,
Yeah.
and we thought, if this is our opportunity to be ahead of what's coming.
Mm-hmm.
And then so we also offered like some more high tech nutrients, liquids, and we'd special order stuff for people, if you had an orchard and you needed some
Mm-hmm.
organic something, But we're organic based. Like, we don't sell any like regular Osmocote or Scott's Lawn stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and which is good for us, because organic products you can just have and sell and keep and possess. But like, if you're doing actually like chemical fertilizers and stuff, there's licensings and regulations, which, is common. It makes sense that, those things are there. And
Oversight over the use of them. Yeah.
yeah. And, just even like how you store them and all, and so, it's worked out for us that being an organic, natural-based company and homestead, that it just fits in with our flow and it feeds our system, and then we use the products ourselves, so then we can give people real responses to how they work and how they work over different years.
Yeah, I mean, like it says something that you're using the product you sell, right?
Yeah.
Like what? Yeah.
Yeah. We don't use anything that we don't believe in.
Yeah.
And we don't try to push a product just because there's a profit margin. Like that's really not at all what it's about.
Yeah.
We live in such a rural area that it's not like, if we really push a certain thing, it's really going to generate like an exponential amount of different revenue because we've tried to focus on something, And then we pretty much stick to our region with our sales and stuff, because there's plenty of really awesome places here in Athens.
Yeah.
And then we work with those folks, if we need something and store in Athens has it, I've bought lots of stuff from Cool Digs and for our farm and for, like, oh, I need 1 jug of something, I'll call Cool Digs and I'll just get it from them and, and that old, like, keep the community going type, philosophy. So that's kind of where we got into the fertilizer aspect of things and the amendments. And then in 2018, Ohio had some really awesome cannabis bills going. And there was one, it was really like probably, it would have been the best bill in the country had it passed. It was just too good. There was levels for every person to get in. The permits and the access fees and stuff were like legit, like farm scale, like $50, $100, and it was written up to be all inclusive. If you
It's like 7 people in the state didn't like that language, and so nobody in the state got it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then they snuck in the current medical program. They shot that down, and and it was kind of unfortunate timing because I believe right there at the same time was I believe it was issue 3, where they had a group of maybe 12 grows were going to create basically a monopoly through a vote, and then establish the dispensaries, and then so that kind of gave the state like this push to be to say, oh look, people want to control this for themselves. They it's greedy. We need to do something. And then so people came up with these. I think it was Ohio Families for Change was the really good bill because there was a few of them, and then they just those folks just kind of disappeared, and it was like all of a sudden. But then it was because the state had made their own program and then created what we have today for the medical program. There was no rec at the time.
And what year is this?
It's 2018.
So the same time as the farm and hemp bill.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And so
I didn't realize medical's been here that long. Fuck.
yeah, it's been I think like so in 2018 they started the process of applications.
Yeah. Oh, because it's like you got to get the licenses for the people to grow it, then they have to grow it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So like the way it worked is, it was a point system for Ohio, and that's how they said they made it fair.
Explain what you mean by that. The point system.
So you've got your application, and there were criterias and requirements for the cultivation facilities and for the dispensaries and for the processing facilities. And there were things like the vicinity. You couldn't be within 500 feet of a school or a church or for certain circumstances. And then you had to be further from things like that for other parts of the program. It's like the dispensary could be a little closer, but the grow had to be a little farther. And if I'm right, it was at least 500 feet. And which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you consider infrastructure and that Ohio probably has like more churches per capita than anywhere, maybe in the world,
Mm-hmm.
it really pushes the businesses like to the side.
Yeah. So then what you're explaining is like so you're more than 500 feet away from a school point. Like,
Yes.
okay, so there's like this criteria of like, this is exactly what we want. The more of this that you qualify for, the more points that you're going to get. So it's like the farther you bend your fucking knee and give away
Yeah.
your spine.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Security. Security was one thing. If you had team members from out of state that were already, and so for instance, the out of state thing was that they want, Ohio, the language that the state was using in all of this was, as always, like, we want to protect the children and we want to have the best program we can, which was, it's like, yeah, everyone wants to protect the children, but that's an excuse generally. Better parenting protects children mostly. And the best program in the state, it's like Ohioans have smoked weed since Ohioans have been here. So, it's always been heavy on cannabis.
Yeah.
And, so there's, just drawing money from elsewhere really. And then the prices on these things came out and it was like,
Of like the
yeah,
applications.
the application
And, yeah.
cost, was like, oh, $2,500, and you're like, well, that's not a big deal. Well, it's a huge deal to anybody who's thinking that they would have a place in this and like they're going to use a building that they already own or, and then it's non-refundable.
Mm-hmm.
So then they came out and they're like, well, there's only going to be, a dozen of these size grows. They have two tiers, tier 1, tier 2,
Mm-hmm.
30,000 square feet, so tier 1, 3,000 square feet, so tier 2. And so I think it was at first they were going to have 12 tier 1s and 24 tier 2s.
And like, how many applications are they getting for those 36 spots?
Right, hundreds, and then so there's like, boom.
Fuck, who's that money going to?
That's, it's always changing. And it's the Department of Commerce and the Board of Pharmacy were the folks who were in control of it first before they had developed just a division of cannabis control. And so you've got all that non-refundable application fees. You've got a point system that is generally, it's designed to be fair. But at the same time, so, if your security is, you're going to spend, let's say $100 an hour on providing security by hiring a firm that also maybe like secures, oil fields or something, like a big company that is really, really good at what they do, you're going to get more points based off you have more money. Not that if you have a solid steel building with a gate and a camera and you locate your place near a police department and you barely spend any money, but you're just as secure, but you're not spending.
Not secure in the way that they specifically stated that you need to be. Comply,
Yeah.
comply, comply,
Comply.
comply.
Yeah, it's
okay.
a control thing.
Yeah.
They want control of this plant. And
Why is that? Because it's attached to money. Like if there's fucking why power is.
I really think that over the last 2 years, and it's like I've been involved with this plant for quite some time, and but over the last 2 years, there's been so many circumstances with thinking about cannabis and its use for various health issues, whether it's nutrition or disease prevention. I'm almost to the point where I really think I'm like there is possibly nothing this plant can't be used for in those three necessities as a human being. And I'm reminded of there was a movie or a documentary called The Union that came out maybe 15 years or so ago, and it was out of British Columbia, Canada. Joe Rogan was on it, because he was really like, I don't want to say anti-cannabis, but I believe he was, until finally one of his friends were like, "Dude, you're being ridiculous."
Yeah, he openly says that he like didn't smoke anything until like late 20s.
Yeah,
late, maybe even 30s. Yeah.
And and so they, they're like, "Try it." He did. He's like, "Oh my gosh, I've been a fool." And then so in that movie, there's or in that it's not a movie, it's like a documentary, but Ronald Reagan's former medical advisor or something, you know, it's like the head dude of medicine for the U.S. They got him on there. And anybody knows about Ronald Reagan, it's like he brought the war on drugs. Like Nixon brought cannabis into being a Schedule One drug, but Reagan solidified it, you know, and created the war on drugs. And his head dude of medicine and health is on there, and they're like, so in your opinion, like what disease or ailment could cannabis really be used for? And his response, and you know, not necessarily a quote, but pretty close, was he couldn't think of one circumstance that it didn't have some kind of application. And they were not expecting that answer. You know,
Yeah,
they were
yeah.
expecting, you know, the big three, or you know, and and so I really
The big three. What do you mean by that?
like cancer,
Uh,
you know, like the big bad,
Immune disorders. Yeah.
yeah, you
Okay. Okay.
know, HIV, yeah, you know, and so I really do think that like all in all, it's two things. It's a tool to keep people where they want them. You know, like when they put cannabis on a Schedule One list, and these are like there's something called the Nixon tapes, and it's where Nixon is talking to his committee about what are we going to do about these protesters? What are we going to do about the war protesters? What are we going to do about the Black Panthers? What are we going to do about the hippies? What are we going to do about all these folks? And they couldn't, you know, you're allowed to legally, lawfully gather and protest. And so they couldn't stop that. They were gaining too much momentum. You know, they're
Mm-hmm.
really changing things.
But
And
hey, they got 2 grams of this plant in their
that
pocket.
was
Let's
it.
fucking ring them up for that.
Yeah, and that
Yeah.
was it. You
Mm-hmm.
know, and then right before that, he had said, "Hey, let's just you know squash this once and for all, and let's do a study, and let's run all the data. Let's show how bad this stuff is. Let's show how it causes cancer. Let's show you know, and then people will just give it up, you know." And they did the study, and they found that they were completely wrong. That it didn't cause the health problems that they were looking for it to cause, and that it, in fact, you know, at the time, it actually helped alleviate and or eliminate the top three types of cancer that were
Hmm.
the top three at the time, and it was like you know, like lung cancer, leukemia, and another, you know, and then so
Well, so then how do they get out of that? Like, do they just like very quietly release those results, or like how? I mean, if
they
you,
stopped the whole study
yeah, okay,
and they just quit. And
didn't prove what I needed. Ah,
no,
let's roll it up.
and the U.S. government owns two patents on the use of cannabis for medicine. One is a neurological protectant, and the other I forget exactly what it is. But we have two patents that the U.S. government owns for using cannabis for medicine. So you know I don't really understand how, because all Schedule One narcotics. The main thing that puts them on as a Schedule One is there's zero use for medicine, and there's a strong addiction
Isn't that like
possibility.
necessary for a Schedule One? Is that there is
Yes,
no medical use for
there's
it? Yeah,
zero
yeah,
medical
yeah,
use
yeah.
and a strong chance for addiction,
Hmm.
and neither of those things are real for cannabis. You know,
Which is like pretty like layman at this point.
yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
you know, I mean, your average person it lives in a state where there's legal cannabis, they know that, oh, if I'm having trouble sleeping, I'll get a 2 to 5 milligram gummy, and that'll help me out. I'll wake up with no hangover, and you know, and it's not going to attack my liver like a lot of those drugs do. I don't have to go very far. You know, there's a smiling face on the other end of it in every angle. If it's, you know, there can be, right? You know, it's all something you can produce pretty locally and keep all the money and the wealth and the health locally. And I mean, I think that's it. The big run against cannabis is stopping the money and slowing down health. You know, I think that's it. And it's a tool to, you know, to put people that you don't want away.
Yeah, which is disgusting. Like I can't. It's disgusting. Yeah,
Yeah.
sad. It's really sad.
Yeah. You know, to like, to think, the statistics on all of it. Like, you don't hear this stuff anymore because it's legal. Oh, it's legal, it's fine. It's just move on. And but like the statistics of it are that, like, you know more than half of the arrests are made of, I'll just say, non-white people, which is, everyone else. And those populations that make up more than half of the arrests generally make up like 2 to 12% of the population at all. And it's not, it's not proportionally accurate in any way.
Mm-hmm.
It's just another tool to keep people oppressed, or to keep, people from having access to free medicine and, at this point, recreation. Like, however you want to determine like what recreation is, whether it's just like chilling out, like cutting a little of the stress away from your day by taking a little tiny hit of some keef, or rolling a big giant fat blunt, or just like having fun with it, like it's pretty interesting. It's like people almost just don't think anything about like what it's actually doing, or
Mm-hmm.
like now that it's legal, like the idea of a smoking spot. Like the things that it used to do for you. It's like, oh, you got to hide. So, where are you going to hide? Like either in your house, which that didn't necessarily work because,
Mm-hmm.
everyone was smoking joints, and, smoking creates a lot more smell that lingers than all the modern stuff, vape
Mm-hmm.
pen, or, obviously edibles, or,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's like,
Or like
oh,
even dabs like are a lot less smelly. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
like, and it's gone,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, yeah, you can hit your dab pen, and for 5 seconds you're like, man, somebody's got some cherry gelato, and it's gone. If
Yeah.
you just don't, whereas, for its entire history prior to, like the last decade, you kind of had to seek out a place to go smoke,
Yeah.
and then, so it's like, then you're active in your community because you're looking around. You're going to find something. You're looking for a spot, and then it's who's coming with me,
Yeah.
like I don't want to go alone, and
Yeah, it's crazy for you to explain it that way because I never experienced that as a 28-year-old growing up in this town. It's like obviously it was always like a more accepted here than most areas, but like even by the time I was coming around to the herb, like it was like just like pull up in the alley. It's cool. Like it was before taco, but it just it never seemed like that. I mean, a lot of it would have just been like probably self-imposed,
oh yeah,
but there were a lot of people that just didn't give a fuck. It's like walk past Tony's patio like at any time past 4 p.m. So I don't know. That is interesting. I mean, you're not the first person to have explained that. That's just not my experience because it was so. It was like it was just pushed harder by the time I'd come around. Like it was
yeah,
more accepted.
yeah. That's like when I first time I came to Athens to smoke weed. A buddy of mine, let's see, there was a late night pizza at the time, and it's right next to the Skull, and they were shutting down, and a friend of mine was in the culinary program, and he asked, hey, can I run this place, and keep it open, while I'm in school, and they said yes, it was like he was really good at what he
Nice.
did, so they must have just vibed that he was
Yeah.
a good guy because he wasn't from here, like they
Hmm.
had no relationship,
Yeah. Yeah.
and he's like, come down to Athens, we're gonna go have a big old session, I'm like, okay. And so at the time, uh, Jackio's was O'Hooley's still.
Was
And
it where?
O'Hooley's,
Oh,
it was a,
I didn't know that.
yeah, Jackio's was O'Hooley's, which
Ah.
was Jim Prouty. And he had, the brewery for a few decades. And they didn't open until later in the day. But he's like, yeah, we're going to go up to Little Amsterdam and smoke. I'm like, Little Amsterdam, dude, where the? I'm like, probably 18 or 19
Yeah.
years
There
old,
you go.
And I'm like, Little Amsterdam, that sounds freaking awesome. And lo and behold, it was the patio of the brew pub side of what is
That's
now,
amazing. Yeah.
Jackie
Jackios.
O's, but
Yeah.
it was a Hooley's. And he's like, yeah, my buddies will be here, in a minute. And so, I'm like, oh, this is cool. Like, what's going on? Like I said, I'm like, just an adult, and somebody knocks on the gate and like five dudes with dreadlocks like down to their ass come walking in, and I'm like, okay, this is about to be lit, you know, and it was like everybody had their like awesome cutting edge organic home grow, and that was it. I'm like, okay, there's no other way to be with this
Yeah.
stuff than top notch, tight circles, good friends, community, and so it was like that's like the little session spots
Yeah.
was like and it was like 6 7 minutes 5 minutes it was just like okay, get together, smoke. What do you got? What do you got? What do you got? What do you got? And move on.
Yeah.
And but we always dreamed of a time like now. Like we came into town for the alumni parade. I have two daughters that go to OU,
Nice.
and so one of them's in the engineering program. So they were in the parade, so come to watch them. And we're rolling down Stimson, and I hadn't seen there's a Bloom dispensary there now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know,
Which is weird because like when you mention about like the licensing and where they're supposed to be, like Movano and Debbie's are kind of like on the skirts of town, and then Bloom's just right in the middle.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, absolutely. And so there must not be any of the things that they don't want within the
It's
500
fucking a
feet.
church at the top of Stimson, isn't there? Like,
But a lot of times it's probably 501 feet.
yeah,
Or they can give variances, but I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
know to certain things like that. Like it would probably not. It's probably 500 feet because then with
That
every
makes sense. Top of Mill is kind of like what I was like, whatever, one street over.
yeah, but
Yeah.
still, it's like there's churches freaking everywhere.
Yeah.
And and I don't know anything about Bloom. The one thing I've tried to do in my position in all of this is not pick sides.
Meaning, like your craft guys versus the dispensary
Yeah.
versus the intoxicating hemp guys versus CBD guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm here for the cannabis, and I've seen like for instance with like the Delta 8, right? Like
It's great. I don't understand differentiating on like I'm very muddy on what all this means.
so like a Delta 8 THC only exists in the plant in very small amounts, and so they have to separate the Delta 8 using what is the chemical? Well, basically, they have to stratify the Delta 8 out of hemp,
Mm-hmm.
and then they collect it and they reduce it down to enough to actually make it work.
Yeah.
And I like to read a lot of studies, like all the time. Just white papers, lab tests, testimonials, blind tests, like the real lab work. The government always says we need more of this, we need more time, we need more lab. There's 100,000 plus published studies from like the world's greatest scientists. Like they've just compiled them all
Yeah,
together.
it doesn't say what they want, so those don't exist.
That's
yeah,
it.
yeah.
And one thing that I'd found is that a lot of people hated on the Delta 8. Because it can be like if it's not done properly and there's really no like you can't repeat it every time. It's kind of like an organic process where the chemist has to be on top of what they're doing and they kind of follow the process in each batch
Mm-hmm.
to ensure that each batch is safe. You can't just repeat.
Make the process and manufacture.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you've got to have somebody.
But why?
who's-
Why do people understand? Are the people that are upset like do they have a technical understand? Like what are they upset about?
It just seems like the same old stuff. Like I like the blue team, I like the red team, and then their economy, with like the underground economy of cannabis, like you're hiding out. You don't have to be a good person. You don't have to be anything.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to have some weed and people can come buy it,
Yeah.
right? And so the public face, the legalization happened, and then the Delta 8 happened, and then so I feel like really like, a lot of people were mad because it's like, I'm trying to sell, like us, for instance, we just got on the market for selling hemp, and all of a sudden, like, okay, there's an interest because it's a new thing, it's a new product, it's cannabis, it's got, the health benefits without the high, or that kind of high,
Yeah.
and so
Psychoactive high via
yeah,
the THC. Yeah.
yeah, and then all of a sudden the Delta 8 comes out, and it's like, all these new hemp farmers are like, dang it, like I had this product that was gaining some traction, and now there's Delta 8, so now people can smoke this hemp flower that's sprayed with Delta 8 and get high legally, and we're waiting on the legality, and like it gets you high, and then depending on what kind of cannabis you got before, this stuff might be better than the weed you were getting, right? Like, because it's like the flowers and all. If it's like there were Ohio companies making it and growing the flower,
Yeah.
so
But
it's
it's
like
like a man-made like just that, like that is what turns me off to it. The fact that like you are using a man-made process to like, extrapolate a specific, like I just don't. That's the beginning of the end for me. I
absolutely,
just fuck no.
you know,
Yeah.
and I don't think so. It's like I don't think that flower deserves a place right next to somebody's organic flower that they grew and they harvested and they cured,
Which is
right?
actually what's happening via this hemp ban. Like your product would still be sitting somewhere that Delta 8 sprayed shit is not, right? Via
Yeah,
whatever this ban is.
yeah,
Yeah.
and so but through all my constant trying to learn, like lo and behold, I was reading a study where there's this really hardcore, hard to fight type of cancer cell, and the Delta 8 just annihilates it.
Mm.
So, so through my journey with cannabis, I don't try to, I try to stay neutral
Yeah.
until I know the facts.
Yeah.
And there's, it's like the more you think you know something that you don't really know, more often than not, you find out that you didn't know
Yeah.
anything about it,
Yeah. The more you know, the less you know. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. And so, I've tried to keep an open mind for it, but at the same time, that kind of stuff just seems to allow the authorities that do not want legal cannabis, the excuses. Oh, we have to figure out this Delta 8 thing. We have to figure out, like right now with the hemp ban, Ohio's governor comes out and says, oh, these products are untested, they're unregulated, they're,
How truthful is that?
very untrue. Most of, I'll put it like this, it's like, where are you buying the product? And that will give you a decent insight to how adulterated it might be. Is it the seediest, sideways little, used to be a bait shop tucked under some bridge, and
Mm-hmm.
it looks fishy and weird. Like, you don't want to buy the other stuff in there.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you want to do your work,
Mm-hmm.
But most of these products have QR codes, and they're attached to the license number that the grow happened or the manufacturing facility.
Just like informing the consumer where it came from, how, like who's responsible,
Yeah,
like it's like giving you the information necessary to hold somebody accountable for what they made. What more do you want?
yeah, and too, it's like my thought on this always is like as a farmer or as a grower, it's like I grow vegetables, I grow woodland herbs, I grow hemp, I grow a lot of different stuff, and there's no other agricultural industry or food industry that has to be put through such a strict, rigorous situation. Now, like with the USDA, all these systems are valuable. Checks and balances, safety, like regulatory framework, they're all valuable, but they need to be fit and fair.
Yeah.
When the 2018 Farm Bill passed, it put cannabis, hemp sativa L, as it's classified by, in the bill, it made it a farm commodity. Now, it was regulated, and the fact that you have to have a license, you have to report where it is, you have to have it tested. But after that, once it's free and clear, there's no rules. There's no rules on who can buy hemp. There's no rules on who can sell hemp. It's hemp. And that was the point. And they say, it's like now with the fight, they'll say, oh, Mitch McConnell didn't know. Or like Governor DeWine said, oh, when they passed, it's always they. They is an imaginary person. them
The
as
scapegoat.
and the children, those are all just catchphrases that don't mean anything, And they said, when he was explaining why he's banning intoxicating hemp the other day, well, that's an oxymoron because hemp is not intoxicating. Um, the derivative that they're putting in the product is the intoxicant. Now, they could say hemp-derived intoxicating products.
To clarify, you're talking about like a Delta 8, right? Like that is what you're referencing. The
Well,
derived intoxication.
Yeah, and then in the governors, it's actually Delta 9.
Well, so like, how does that
So
even? Because you're saying to be open. I'm very pessimistic, and so then like when all this like you start to hear about CBG, CBN, and I'm like, yeah, maybe they're just marketing all this shit. It's like, how does Delta 9 get here? Is it like just a different subset of a chemical that they're extracting out? They call this one Delta 9, this one Delta 8. Like, how would you differentiate those two, Delta 8, Delta 9?
so Delta 9 is the primary cannabinoid that we are seeking when we're using cannabis. Like Delta 9 THC is the thing that gives you the intoxication,
Okay.
right? Regular, we'll say, high THC cannabis, like, for instance, wedding cake. Most people will know of wedding cake or cookies. It's like you give those two names, most people know that you
Yeah.
mean you're getting high. And so the Delta 9 is the primary cannabinoid that is getting you high. And our body has receptors for all the cannabinoids, and the Delta 9 really is the one that triggers.
So how's that getting sold out of a vape shop?
So
If it's the same chemical compound that dispensary has to have the license to sell, like, I don't understand.
the dispensaries and everything. So federally, any cannabis that's
Yeah.
not hemp is illegal.
Yeah.
It's federally illegal.
Yeah.
So your Ohio cannabis dispensary that's selling high THC products is illegal federally.
Yeah, like an FBI agent, like a federal agent could still come and wrap that up. Yeah.
Yeah, but the Obama era, during the Obama era, he passed a law that said the federal government would not encroach on cannabis programs in states that ran their programs.
Understood.
And so that's how we've gotten away with it this long.
Understood.
And they tried to repeal it, and it's kind of like one of those things where everyone checks the box. They're like, oh yeah, we'll just keep doing that. That's the easiest way to keep going forward and not have to really deal with this.
This being the inconsistency in the legality between federal and state.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then so with the hemp bill, the 2018 Farm Act or Farm Bill, really basically almost just legalized cannabis across the board, because when you're measuring THC and cannabis flower or products, there's two ways to measure it. One is by what they refer to as by dry weight, and that is how much THC is just available in the product or the flower that you have as it is sitting there.
By weight, you mean?
By weight, if you that's just there. And then so the loophole in all of this that has occurred is that so you have X amount of THC that's just sitting available in the flower or in the product. But there is also in the product or the flower is THCA, and the A stands for acid. So when the THCA is heated up to certain temperatures, roughly, let's say around between 250 350 degrees, 360 degrees actually, the acid drops and the THC becomes available. And then that's the way it is in all cannabis flower, whether it's USDA classified hemp and or everything else, right? So the USDA Farm Bill states very clearly that anything that tests at 0.3 THC by dry weight or below is hemp. Anything that tests above 0.3 THC by dry weight is, they say, marijuana, but we don't really use that. It's a fun word and it sounds cool, but it was really used.
It's a slander term.
Yes, it's derogatory. And so I don't really use that word anymore. which is funny because like you're talking to like the old heads, they're like, man, I got some marijuana from an Indian. I'm like, oh yeah, you don't, that ain't how you say it, dude. That ain't, you don't even know though, so it's cool, And so with the Farm Bill, it was THC by dry weight, and a lot of the cultivars that we all smoke or grew or grow now, if you test them by dry weight, they'll pass as hemp. And so with breeding and selective testing, I could run a pheno. Say I'm running.
I don't know if pheno.
A phenotype so like you have a type of cannabis. Like what's a popular one now that people would, for instance.
Shout out Sarah Coy, Lemon G.
Lemon G.
Yeah.
There you go. So you've got Lemon G. It's got a certain look, a certain structure. And everyone here knows what that look and that structure is. Big, giant, awesome, fluffy, green, And so you run a bunch of seeds, and it's all lemon G. But you've got one that's a little different looking or a little different tasting, and that would be the phenotype. Like I kind of use families as an example.
Gotcha.
Like, you've got the Smith family over here. They're all the Smith family, but there's different individuals.
Yeah, this household's hotheads. These ones are, namaste.
Somebody's big, somebody's tall.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
those subtle differences within it are the phenotypes.
Okay.
And so, through testing and growing out seed runs, they call them, it's like you might run out 6,000 plants, 7,000 plants in a place that you're allowed to. And this one's always done, say this, it's like, oh, this phenotype's always looking done at 45 days, but it's a 60-day variety. Let's test that one, see what's up, see what the THC level is. It's not a stony too, but it's the same seed variety, same parents, same seed. And then so you can find one that has a lower THCA in the test. And then when you test it by dry weight, it's got a lower dry weight but higher THCA. So the lower dry weight of THC when it's like, so in the plant as available. And that's just like if you scraped it off with a pair of scissors, it's like you're not doing anything to it. You're just weight THC as is, not heated up, not.
And that's where you're saying, it's like, what am I understanding? You're saying that you can get more THC in the plant because until it reaches that temperature range, it hasn't converted to what you're measuring for.
Yes. So you got to heat it up to get the THC out. And the Farm Bill said by dry weight. And so a total THC, like when you smoke a fresh flower or, dry cured flower, you're getting the total THC. You're converting the THCA by burning it. That cherry is acting as your decarboxylation, which is the conversion of the acid from the THCA.
Oh, it's just when people say like they're decarbing the weed for like edibles. You're like making it bioly available.
Yes.
I didn't ever understand what they're talking about.
Yeah, so I guess that's so like decarboxylation is the process of heating up cannabis to drop the acid, because THC and CBD both are in their most abundant form are THCA and CBDA. So then when you heat it up, like you were saying, it drops that acid, and then you can eat it and get the effects from it. Otherwise, you'll only get the available THC by dry weight, which would be very, very minimum. And so, that's kind of the secret to the loophole.
Do you think that they understood that, or do you think that they fucked up the language? Like
both. Someone always knows.
That's true. Yeah, you're right.
Someone always.
Shout out to whoever the fuck got that.
Someone's always getting a bone. Throw that dog a bone. Throw that dog a bone.
Nice.
When their bones are gone, we'll see who fights. And Rand Paul just saved. I had to think about that. There's two Pauls, right? Ron and Rand. Rand is their, I believe, senators from Kentucky. Mitch McConnell, who brought the hemp bill forward, he's from Kentucky, and he's a freaking dinosaur.
Yeah.
He's
very, like the stroke guy.
Yeah, very unliked. In that old school, like who's your team way. A lot of people very much dislike him, and I don't know enough about him why. I try not to play that game, and so they tried to put a federal added into one of the big farm bills maybe a month ago that would have done what Mike DeWine just did with like the attempt to ban hemp products based off of some arbitrary information. And it's all arbitrary. Like the definition of hemp comes from some 70s study where there was a guy doing studies on hemp plantations in Canada. And they were like, oh, while you're here, can you tell us what the THC percentage of hemp is? And so he tested some leaf. And they're like, he's like, yeah, the leaf's 0.3. And they're like, okay, that's what hemp is. Now that flower, if the leaf was 0.3, the flower was probably like, he probably tested the leaf because he knew it was weed. You know, it's like, but they're growing it from seed or for seed, so it doesn't matter. No one's smoking it. And, you know, but if the leaf is 0.3 by dry weight, that flower is probably 10 or 15%, you know, by dry weight, you know, because it's not converting the THC.
Yeah. So that's an interesting question. So then when you're looking at like a dispensary website and it's saying something like 27%, are they including the additional like THCA that would be converted, or are you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because so after like the first year for the Ohio medical program, one of my good friends was actually like, you know, his job before that was working for the government, and he filled out paperwork all the time. You know, I don't want to talk too much about who he is or what he does, or did.
Give me his social.
Yeah. But his job involved filling out tons of paperwork for hundreds of companies, you know, that he had to inspect and stuff. And so he heard about this point system, and he's like, hit me up. He's like, dude, let's get one of these permits. I got that. That's my job. It's like, I know like how to fill out
Big time.
you know, I got this. And I was like, you do, you know, I was like, if all the people in the world, you know, like, I bet you do, you know, and, it went, you know, as these things do in this business, like it took, more, you know, it had to go the direction it had to go. You know, the state wasn't playing any games. They want cut and dry. They don't really want big fun experiences. They want their sterile, like, here's your weed licenses so you guys will shut up for a while. Like, that's what that was all about, you know. But, you know, I was like, yeah, I'm into doing this. And we, you know, we worked on it for a while, and then the process came into like fruition where like, okay, the license applications are out and stuff, and he filled it all out. He found some other friends that had other avenues to help find all the necessary stuff. You know, in that world, like you need lawyers and investors, and you know, it's ridiculous. It's just
Part of the game.
It's the game.
Yeah.
It's not cannabis.
Yeah.
It's the game of cannabis.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's the new game of cannabis. And lo and behold, they got the license. And they were one of the first only companies to get vertically integrated, which means they had a license for all three processes. Like they had the cultivation, the dispensary, and the processing.
Who's this you're talking about?
So
like another friend of yours in the state?
yeah.
Okay.
And so they got that license. And, you know, we were working on starting that up originally. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, you're going to need $250,000 for this. You're going to need this. You're going to need, I'm like, man, that is not really what I'm into.
Yeah.
You know, like, I don't want to play the game. I want, you know, I'm a deschedule individual. I'm saying remove it from the scheduling. Alcohol's not scheduled. You know, like, and it's everywhere, and it's a nuisance, or it's not, and it's something that adults have the choice to use, and it's regulated, you know, so, like, you know, you don't have to have it on a scheduled list to make sure that it's not at the playground.
Yeah.
You know, there's plenty of stuff, you know, gasoline is pretty harmful.
Well, so to that, not at the playground fucking thing, like, you could just get a goddamn paper bag. Like, they have paper bags at the fucking carry, you know what I mean? It's like, fuck you, man.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, fuck you.
And, you know, so my buddy got their license, and then he gave me a call one day. He's like, hey, I'm looking for an assistant head grower if you know anybody down that way that wants to do it, you know. And he's like, it's a year deal, you know, it'll be at least a year plus like the build out time, you know, so a couple years, you know, given all the various stuff. And I was like, yeah, let me think about it, you know. I was like, I'll do it. You know, they already got the license. Yeah. Like, it's definitely going to happen. You know, I was like, I'll do it. And He's like, good, that's why I called. I was hoping that you would say you'd do it, you know. And so I ended up taking that on. And at the time, it was a pretty interesting cannabis landscape because you had these big states that had just reached like California, Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico. Like they had just reached this like giant growth curve where like they kind of bought up all the stuff in existence. You know, like you couldn't get like you could go to a grow shop and get yourself a couple lights and this and that, but like it was difficult to find 100 of the lights that you actually wanted. And being in this mom and pop position that we were already for a few years with Heartbeat Homestead, I was like, oh, I got this, no problem. Like I'll outfit this whole grow. Like I know the people that will know the people that'll know the people where somewhere on a distant land there will be 45 of those fans sitting in a shop and they'll mail them here and they'll truck them there and we'll get them, and
Which is how you like brought it to fruition.
yes.
Yeah.
And so we did, like my wife's company, she's the owner. So I always say my wife's company. We sold the grow that I worked for in Dayton. We sold them all their lights and their fans and pots, nutrients, for years. And I went over to be the assistant head grower, and we started. I think we had our first harvest. I believe it was the day before Christmas on 2018. Or it might have been. Yeah, it'd have been 2018 because it wasn't.
Where is this geographically that you're talking about?
Dayton, Ohio.
So you were here and
Yeah.
like kind of commuting?
I moved to Yellow Springs, Ohio.
Wow.
Got a
Is
house.
that the Dave Chappelle spot?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'd see him all. Our head grower, my buddy, was like he'd kicked it with him every night.
That's fucking
and
crazy.
like he'd be pumping gas next to you, and he's all over the place, hanging out at New Year's. Like
Yeah, man.
and so it was really like neat and exciting and fun. I was
Yeah.
like, I can't pass up this first phase.
Yeah.
And this once again, the state was dragging their feet on issuing licenses. Everybody has to be vetted. You got to have a FBI. Going to the sheriff's department to get an FBI BCI background check to work for a cannabis company was a new thing. Walking in the giant, this is a big city. It's not like Athens, it's like there's a 30-story building. The sheriff's office is in there, and, you're standing there with your buddies, him hauling around like, and the sheriff's like, you guys here for cannabis license stuff? Like, yeah. How did you know? Like, of course we are, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise we'd already be in there. They'd have us in a box for cannabis if we were in there for that. And so we had 3 guys who grew the whole first round.
How many plants is this?
3 flowering rooms, hundreds and hundreds of plants.
Wow.
Hundreds and hundreds.
Is this the first time you ever had ever got to see something that scale? Like,
no, because I had been to other states that had it.
Cool.
But definitely for indoor,
Yeah.
like that kind of commercial situation.
Yeah.
Like you've got Ohio, we were a tier 2 license, which means we're the little guy.
Yeah. Okay.
And
You say 3,000 or something?
yeah, and so about 100 plus lights.
Nice.
I think we run like 70. We were able to do 90, but we're running 75 flowering lights and 60 veg lights and like a half a dozen to a dozen lights for moms and then racks for clones, and it was incredible.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
Candy store.
Yeah,
man.
and but I guess where I'm getting at with this is so like we got our first harvest off, and there was only 3 of us, and the state came in to do, because the state comes in, does inspections, they take samples, like for pathogens and stuff.
Yeah.
Like they're
molds and bacteria.
yeah, because private companies actually also got in licenses to become the labs. So it's like the state is only the bureaucracy and the authority of it, and everything else is private in Ohio.
I mean, do they have an interest in that testing? Oh, well, I'll hold that thought.
Yeah, and so the state comes in to do their first test on us, and they're like, "Where is everybody?" We're like, "Well, our other buddies at lunch, and security guards out there. He let you in, It's like, "No, where's everyone else?" We're like, "Who? What do you mean, everyone else? Who?" They're like, "The other growers and like the people that carry the watering hose, and they're like, this is it, dude. Like, you're kidding. Like, no, it's 3 of us, and they're like, there's no other employees. And we're thinking, well, yeah, because like we've got people that are waiting to get their job, but they're just not receiving their security clearance. And we're waiting, and it was somebody behind door number 2 slowing it all down, from the whole thing. Every day, cannabis, someone's pushing the brakes,
Well, in every industry, everywhere, all at once. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so they're just like, we've never seen this situation, like anywhere that's doing anything like this got like 20 plus employees,
Well, like how many hours are you working like over this harvest period? Or like which is
6
grow
plus
season?
days a week.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like we made ourselves a little pack that like, because we couldn't get anybody else in
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
and it was like,
Legally. Yeah.
yeah. And it was like 6 days a week, we're on salary. So it's like, like, and 2, like I moved there from here to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I went there to do that. And I'm like, I got this opportunity to work in a warehouse to explore my craft and to refine my craft and get paid, and I don't have to pay the electric bill.
Yeah.
I don't have to pay for nutrients. I don't, like I get to learn
Yeah.
and get paid and be part of this like awesome, new thing,
Yeah.
And so like we get our tests, the state's like, wow, this is like this is the best place we've been. This is the best herb we've seen, and there's places that invested, $30 million into their grows, and like that was, our grow was, it's a giant building and team of employees. Like it definitely was not free, but it wasn't a $30 million build out.
Yeah. Well, that just sounds like they're playing the game,
Yeah.
versus like you guys that are there to grow the herb.
100%.
Yeah. Kind of intuitively makes sense.
Yeah. Like everything. Like, oh, you got this figured out. Let us buy the patent.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to push that underground.
Yep.
And so, we got our first test back, and there was only 3 grows at the time that were harvesting, and our numbers beat these big tier 1s. Like, and then for the dispensaries, most people, the way they shop is they go in and they look at THC number, they want that to be high. They look at the dollar, they want that to be low.
Yep.
And that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Can I get 28 for 28 milligrams for $20, or can I, it's they want more THC for dollars.
Yeah.
And so our first round, we had people that were really looking for varieties that were going to check all the boxes. Like they were going to be strong, they were going to be flavorful, they were going to be shiny, sparkly, all the stuff. And they chose really good varieties for it. It was a bunch of stuff I'd not really heard of, like, so to speak. I'd heard of it, but not like as around, stuff that's coming out of Michigan markets and things that were tried and true on commercial scale for being like a boutique flavor and quality, And then we brought some of our Ohio Death Star and that kind of stuff in too, And so we were getting our first test, and we're like 27, like between 22, 24 on our low end, up to like 28, 29% on our high end. And that's strong. A legit test of 28, 29%, like that is very strong cannabis.
How are they measuring it? Like for all of the, like, is there a conversion of like, if there is this much THCA once it's converted? Because like, if you have to burn it to convert it, how, like, does this make sense? How are you measuring it?
No, either there's 2 methods. There's one where like they'll decarb it and then test it, or they'll use gas, like gas chromatography or liquid, and so it's like they're either gassing it off, and it's all, it's I don't know how much I believe how I want to say accurate, but I know it is like. They can repeat it.
Well, that's what, like, you brought up earlier, right? You talk about, like, there is this process, but it's a delicate one that you kind of have to, like, hold your hand through it all the way. Like, there has to be a guy making sure it's going the right way. You would assume that it would have to be that way. It's like, nope, we just throw it in this machine and it gives me a number. Because the other thing that I've heard a lot of people talk about is, like, why is there not consumer access to those people? Like, you would think that those people would want the consumer... That's how businesses work. Like more people to pay us money to do the thing we do. So why can't I take my home grow to this lab. Like, I don't understand that.
You know, the one, like, the way, that's the way it needs to be.
Yeah.
You know, and I'll say arguments almost, you know. And you know now it's like arguments used to just be a healthy thing. Like schools would have debate clubs. You know, now argument means like you're throwing fists. You know, it's like no, I disagree. I'm allowed to disagree.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like being allowed to disagree is like one of the things I feel like we've lost the most in the last
Triggering.
decade.
Yeah. How dare you
Yeah,
believe
like
something different?
yeah, you know, like you know, it's like religion. I believe in this. I don't believe in that.
Yeah.
I need to respect that. You know, and until science steps in and says like you know what's going on. But I feel like with cannabis, it's like we just went from completely incarcerating people, making, you know, very bad realities for people to, oh, this is what legal looks like, forget about the middle. You know, when there's like, yeah, no, there's a lot of stuff we need to bring up and talk about. Like families were shattered, you know,
I mean,
like,
we're talking about like you never get out of that box for the rest of your life.
yeah, there's
For
people
like
right
a
now.
non-violent crime. Yeah, I mean, I feel grateful that like because like just yeah, I could have been me.
Yeah,
Could have been me.
and I've been arrested for cannabis. Sucks,
Yeah.
you know. And like, you know, my story was like, you know, one of the arrests, which you know, that's like, thank God I live in Ohio because Ohio's been decriminalized since I want to say the 70s, but I think it may be more than you know more than 90s. But it's been a long time Ohio's
Mm-hmm.
been decrim, and if we lived in a state that was, or if I lived in a state that wasn't decrim, you know, during my time growing up, like my teenage years and young adulthood, you know, it was like the mid 90s to the early 2000s, right? If I'd have lived in somewhere else, three strikes you're out, I'd be in prison for the rest of my life
Yeah.
right now because I've been caught with a joint or a smoking weed with people who said, hey, come smoke this weed with us. And then, like, I'm there. Like, that's the only reason. Like, hey, you know, walking into a restaurant, hey, we're back behind the fence smoking weed. You want to come hit this doobie? Sure. Get caught, get arrested. Like, you know, that simple.
See, that's where I was saying, like, I just don't have that lived experience, dude. Like, since I was since I was in middle school, like at Athens Middle School, walking uptown, like after you get out of school, like you're walking past the skunk, right? Like, oh,
Yeah.
funny smell. You
Yeah.
know, so then I just, yeah, I mean, that's
I'm
terrible.
happy for you for that.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm
I'm
grateful.
you know, like we've had interns and from Hocking College's cannabis program
Mm-hmm.
to help with our hemp, and just you know, like talking to those guys about like the reality of their reality with this plant and their experience versus my reality with this plant and the experience. You know, I'm like just those things. I'm like I'm so thankful that you guys don't have to remember any of that or like you don't have PTSD from it, you know, like, you know, telling them, you know, like, for instance, you know, when I went to college in the late 90s, you couldn't, or even any time in the 90s, really, like, you couldn't drive down 33 on a Friday night without seeing 5 or 6 cars completely stripped on the
Yeah,
car.
it was
Like,
a known drug highway, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, and like, it was always the same looking people, period. Minorities, hippies, hillbillies, you know, the have-nots.
The brand new Ford Expedition with the surgeon in it that's got his wife. Yeah, they're never getting pulled over.
Rolling pounds of what the hell ever.
Yep.
And, you know, and that's the way it's always been.
Yeah, yeah.
But it was really, really bad. Like, I remember getting pulled over multiple times, you know, in one night. You know, I remember getting pulled over on 33 in Richland Avenue, like, having my kid in the car, and the cop pulls us over, and he's like, walks up to the car, he's like, excuse me, your license plate light's out, and he sees, like, I got a wife and kid. He's like, but you'll be all right. I just want to let you know, have a good night. Like, I had dreadlocks. All he saw was some dreadlock hippie dude passing. I'm going to pull him over and get him for the weed. And
It's crazy.
And he seen I had a family, and it's like, oh, Jesus, this guy's sober. But, you know, go ahead, you know. And, like, that's the real, you know, helicopters, like, chasing people, you know, it was wild. Like,
That is fucked. That's fucked.
and that's why it's like, fuck giving these guys these licenses. Period. People's
Which is the difference between when you're saying like deschedule. Like I shouldn't need to pay you this license. To, like if you deschedule it, then it is that you're to just fucking.
yeah.
Hey, what's up? There's something grow some fire shit. You should stop over and pick it. Like yeah.
Yeah, and then
like,
there's the regulatory thing with everything else if you want to sell it. Like, I need a vending license to vend in the state of Ohio to sell stuff.
got it.
So, if I can vend with my vending license, and, this was an argument that I got into at the big grow, the medical grow was, once people get licenses, and not my, I will say clearly, not my buddy that I was working with. This was not him talking, but, other people in that world, not necessarily that company even, but it was like, once they get your license, like, you know what, no one else really deserves to do this. We're checking the boxes. We're making sure it's safe. We're testing for this. We're blah, 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 blah. 10,000 years of people using this plant. The only people that ever got killed from it was like, got run over by a forklift, or it wasn't the weed,
Yeah.
and Ohio runs a system called Metric, and that's a track and trace system from seed to sale. And so every single input that goes into that plant, every bit of leaf that comes off to that plant, the dry weight, finish, where it goes to the dispensary that it goes to, when it gets there, all that stuff is tracked, and it's a system called Metric. And so my point was with them, was why can't I take my home grow to like an Ohio-based co-op where they test it, they check it, they put it, why can't I run that system at home? Like, there's no security to make sure that when I'm in that warehouse putting in all this information that I'm putting in the right information. That's imaginary.
Mm-hmm.
So there is no boundaries on, I don't have a camera on me watching my fingers hitting the keyboard. Anyone could fabricate any information, so, but what you couldn't fabricate is I ship in my product to a state certified testing facility. It tests well, it gets put into the stream of commerce as any individual, and that's why I say, like, the deschedule is a realistic thing that, could work, because, just like you're allowed to make wine at home, you're allowed to make
Homebrew,
beer.
yeah, beer, yeah.
No one's watching to see who or what you're doing with that. So, like, there's already, a million things that are out there that aren't being picked on,
Mm-hmm.
like we are.
Yeah. One thing we talked about was like the federal government being like, we're not going to really stick our hands in it. Let's let the states regulate it. Like, isn't that to a degree? Because can't they kind of pardon me, like, if you don't change this to this requirement, like, we're going to pull funding for this, and like, isn't that a way that they would say to the public, we're going to let it be, but then kind of not, because states that haven't regulated it, right? It's like those are the people whose ear that they're in. Like, oh, if you do this, we're going to pull this. It's the same thing with like, it was like the drinking age, right? Like when states got to regulate the drinking age, but it was like, if you don't make it 21, we're going to take all.
Yeah.
I feel like, yeah. So then for just like that, I don't know. I wanted to ask that because to say like they're just hands off, I just don't trust. I don't believe that.
No, it's like they do, they do swoop in every once in a while, and I always assume, not being like on the real-time information with like the state of New York, say, like it's just a free-for-all in New York City. And, like we've got our Ohio, 6,000 plus Ohio small businesses right now are making revenue by selling THCA hemp-derived products.
Damn.
And where are the, to put it bluntly, where are the bodies? Where are the kids fishing out? Like, there are not THC opioid response kits at the rest stop, but there are for real opioids. Like, there's no pandemic of problems,
Mm-hmm.
And there could be, and that's why I'd like try not to get too hung up on it other than personally, because like I wouldn't want any of those people's jobs. I would not want to be the governor.
Yeah.
I would not want to be the politicians that may or may not have voted on the bill that's going to dictate the last 7 years of my investments, where the rest of my future goes.
Yeah.
I would not want to be those guys, because there's other people like me who have done the same thing, but they're not going to be nice. there's going to be lawsuits. There's going to be, and rightfully so.
Yeah, they already were with the ban,
Yeah,
right? Which is how they got the 14-day reinstatement or whatever. Yeah.
Like day one, there's 3 large companies like, we're suing you.
Yeah.
Because, for the governor's address for his emergency use or his emergency order, for anybody who missed it, during his address, he actually said, these are federally legal products that he was putting the ban on. I mean, he said that out loud to the public.
Whoops.
And one of his final things were, after all, look at all the money they're making. So,
again, let me know what you're thinking about, big dog. You just did.
I mean, come on.
Yeah,
it's federally legal. They're making tons of money. We don't have, like somebody.
It's kind of what makes you believe that it would be big alcohol or be these big multi-state operators that are like, fuck you getting that like shit from the gas station. Like, you got to come to my dispo.
Yeah.
That's it.
You got to pay the piper.
Yeah.
And, and to me, that's the conundrum of cannabis for them, is that they can't really figure out how to get all the dollars because people can grow it at home. They're doing a really good job at figuring out how to get the dollars and to keep people away from it.
Which is like part of the that was a good segue into the current events. So like as we've been talking, this hearing has been happening, and so what they're trying to do is they're trying to change what we voted on. We have 12 plants per household. Like we can give it to one another. Like these are things that they're trying to take back. I mean, like what? Yeah, so you kind of said like the last 7 years of your investment. Like what's on the line today in this hearing?
Well, it's pretty more money owed is the bottom line of what I see. Because listening to it today, they added, I don't know if it's a Senate bill. I don't know if they added a sub bill, but they changed it. They added some changes. And they're trying to compromise, as they say. And it's like good cop, bad cop. Is this one, the one representative, the one Democrat, he's the guy on our side. It's like a boy band. I like Timmy. I like Stevie. It's like they give you one person to kind of identify with. And he's been, hopefully they're legit. Hopefully it's not a show. Hopefully this is how they actually feel and their real opinion, to the best of their ability at least. And so what I'd heard today was that, and they voted on this. It's either been yay or nay since we started talking.
Yeah.
We had to turn it off, And it was that they're going to allow us, and this is like today they sent them the change, I believe, was they're going to allow us to keep the 12 plants. Oh. They're going to allow us to share.
Wow.
They're going to, I think they're also going to put in there so in the current law as of prior to 3 o'clock today, you could smoke anywhere that they didn't enforce you not to smoke. The language in this whole thing goes both ways. It was like, and then which then for it means if someone tries to stop you, they probably can't in court. Right? It's if no one minds you're smoking there, then have at it. Was basically what it said. And
well, that's kind of dangerous though. Like, because then I could just decide, it's bothering me.
Yep. Yes. So
don't like that loose interpretation.
And so that's why this is really awful. The whole thing is awful. It's loose.
Well, to be fair though, right? I would say that that's at least on par with like we don't allow public intoxication until you pay for a brew week event, and then then we're gonna rope it off, and then you can drink in public. But I would say at least, because that's always like the parallel made is like, well, how do you regulate that? It's like you also, you don't want people like just openly drinking on the street. So like that's what you're saying is like you wouldn't necessarily, or you would, like if I'm just walking down the Court Street, like ripping a J, there's no signs that says I can't do that. Like that's what you're saying is could be interpreted. But then so I'm walking past a restaurant that has like one of those like little like parking spot things, right? And then
like
now
the
that
eatery
could
spots.
become a problem. That just is that's a little concern.
And the thing is, it's like there are laws in place already for all those kind of things, nuisance laws. It's like things that cover, and that's Sarah Koya from Cool Digs. She's testified. I'd almost go as far as saying it like every opportunity that one person could have testified, you know, and that was, you know, and Donnie, and you know, and that's the things they said. Just like you're trying to create these new rules when there's all, and this is cut or dry. This isn't opinion. This is law. You know, there are laws already in effect that says you can't do certain things to make, you know, intoxicating stuff out of stuff and sell it. You can't just be a nuisance. You can't, you know, invade someone's personal space, you know. And but at the same time, as a society, and this is where I, you know, try not to lean one way or another too hard on it, other than like, you know, don't do bad things to good people.
Yeah.
You know, where it's like, yeah, there needs, as a business owner, I need clear defined parameters, right? The federal government says that hemp is any cannabis that is 0.3 by dry weight, period, or less, it's hemp. The state of Ohio makes our own program for hemp, which that was the thing that the USDA allowed us to do. If your state wrote up a program and they approved it, you ran your program, right? So what's Ohio do? Total THC for hemp, which means my flower has to test at 0.3 or below total THC.
Even like after the decarboxylation.
Yeah, my hemp flower. So I'm like, you know, pick the one gray mouse hair out of those mountains of mice, and that's, I got to shoot for that target every time. So like, as far as this Mike DeWine bullshit about Ohio's unregulated Ohio, I would challenge any other industry person that doesn't make like super volatile chemicals to even pretend like they've gone through the testing and the hurdles and the expenditures that we've gone through as farmers, period. You know, and I've tested, I'm waiting right now. I had my sample taken last Tuesday, and as of prior to coming in to this, I haven't received my results yet. And so I'm still waiting on my results. So it's like I've got an entire year invested in this crop, and I have to wait and see if it's 0.3 below, 0.3 and or below total THC, to see if I, one, get to keep it because it does pass my test, or two, it doesn't pass my test and I can retest. Well, it's another $150, and maybe it, you know, depending on where, like say my test comes in at 0.32, and that's a failure. That 0.2 is so ridiculous, like in what it means for anything at all. You know, it's like if you pour yourself a glass of water and you're measuring it, and you're like, there's a hair more depth of water in that cup. Like, it says nothing to the universe. That 0.2 does nothing to the universe.
But how, because like the way that you were explaining it, right, is like you were able to get that hemp below 0.3 because of the THCA content converting post that, like, how do you get the strain down to that if it was, like,
Genetics.
maybe I misunderstand. Okay.
Genetics.
This is the pheno hunting thing you're talking about?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
People have put in so many like tens of thousands of plants.
Yeah. What is replacing the weight of that when, like, because like if THC is going down, something else it has to be going up? Or?
CBD.
CBD.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a big chemical tricky soup, and that's why these people that none of the people in charge or any of this should have any of the power. They're not scientists. They're not for the plant. They're regulatory people.
I don't even understand what they're regulating. How the fuck can you regulate shit you don't understand?
100%. You know, it's like me going into the Asian American Culture Center and designing their fucking Chinese New Year fest. Like, it's that stupid.
Oh my God. That's a great analogy.
You know, it's that ridiculous. Yeah. You know, and it's classic. Like, what other industry would we take the former abusers and make them the regulatory body? Period.
Yeah.
It's like opening up a preschool that only hires former child predators. There's no other way to look at it from as a cannabis person.
Mm-hmm.
You know, period. Like, you don't like cannabis. You actually want to put people in places where they risk getting murdered for having some of it.
Which is
Called
also
prison.
there's probably just a separate incentive that really sucks that it works for that, but just like private prisons in general, right? Because like the things you don't think about is like once all these like whatever the big seven alcohol guys that didn't like that and put that down, but then you have the fucking like labor unions for the prisons that are like, nah, fucking keep that shit illegal because the like so. That it just turns into so many. It's such a delicate thing with all these fucking interests and like it
And
gets
Ohio's a
really hard,
private
man.
prison
Yeah,
industry place.
yeah,
And you don't have to look far from the people making up all these rules to see who makes the money from them. So, and it's all, it's big and scary like that, And so that's where, I go back to the, like, deschedule it,
yeah.
And then so another
I
thing
mean, what's
was,
the path to deschedulization?
the president says it's not on the scheduled list anymore.
Oh, like how it would be a federal thing.
Yep.
Yeah, I see.
And like we're honestly like really super close to that. Like I saw, I try to stay as current as I can in all the cannabis stuff because it's changing daily, state to state, federal, and so one of the people I follow on Instagram posted a video a couple Sundays ago, and we're like, holy moly, do you see what Trump just posted? And it was like, I guess like I don't really follow him, And I mean, I live in the middle of nowhere, and
Yeah, on a homestead growing
know,
up. Yeah.
the only media I see is by choice.
Yeah, as it should be.
I used to watch like NBC at night, like every night to see what like the rest of the world's getting, and like for a long time, and then finally like I know what they're getting. I can see that, they're getting the headlines.
Yeah.
And but
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, the other night, Trump posted this, and it's so funny. Like, I believe the right wing and the left wing flying on the same bird. Like, and I'm not giving anyone a hall pass. I don't like this person or that person. Like, they're politicians.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
they're playing their team. Like, and hopefully we get crumbs. We get more crumbs from some of the other ones than the other ones. Like that's how it is.
Yeah,
Like they're kings and queens. Like regardless.
Yeah,
And,
yeah. That is wild.
the last guy was no better than this guy.
Fuck, yeah. Well, it's like I don't trust that they are gonna do anything to materially impact my life. Like I think it's like probably get like worry about your 5 minutes and then take care of that 5 minutes and go 5 minutes outside of that. Like you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Fuck, what else can you literally do? You know?
That's where the smart moves are, right? Like and so the video was. It was like an infomercial kind of thing, but like an old school PBS science, kind of video, like something you see at the library, where like, man, some real science nerds made this, that's wild. But it was some green screen person, and I don't know if you saw this or not. It's mind blowing for someone in my position, right? And it's a green screen person. They've got you can see their head, and they've got this suit on. And it looks like galaxies are floating around in their body. And they're like, about the nervous system, and about the endocrine system, and about the circulatory system. But do you know about your body's most important system that controls all the other systems? And without it, you wouldn't exist. The endocannabinoid system. And I'm like, WTF, dude. Are you kidding me? Like, what is about to happen? Is this game on?
Yeah.
And so they go on about the endocannabinoid system, and they explain it, like in a pretty decent, quick way.
Yeah.
You have two of these systems. One is basically in charge of functions, and one is basically in charge of nerves and response and emotion, right? And then it takes that like twist. There's like a plot twist in it. It's like happy-go-lucky, and then there's like an old guy on oxygen, and they're like, and do you realize that hemp-derived tinctures of CBD would offset all these problems, and that the man is snaking us for like $60 billion a year. And that if you're old and you're just taking CBD tinctures, you'd probably have half the problems and double the happiness. And but the government is keeping it unregulated. And so, who's it going for? Who's getting the money? Whatever. I don't really care. I want people to stop getting stabbed in the shower in prison because they had some fucking weed.
Heard.
Period. Tomorrow. Now. Like yesterday.
Yeah. Which a large portion of keeping them there is a lack of willingness to admit that you were wrong.
They don't want to be like, I'm a fucking racist.
I fucked maybe the last 15 years. It's like, and I could understand like the burden, like fuck, everybody has,
Right.
in their life has done something that they're ashamed of. But then to like, yeah.
There's a lot of admittance of some shit if you start, and then the repercussions,
Oh,
people,
like the countersuits of like, you just fucking imprisoned me for 25. Yeah.
Yeah.
You always hear about that. Fucking, they always sue and they always win fucking millions of dollars.
and so, and that was like, it's just shocking to be like, we live in this like duality kind of like situation where there's like, it's all going on at once and like in both big ways, like it's all huge. Like there's a big, huge anti-cannabis push, but then there's fucking weed everywhere, and it's like, at this point, it's like, I'm against the sky and we should get rid of it and regulate it. And like, and they do, like they do shit with the sky.
Chemtrails.
Like, yeah. So it's like
block out the sun, which also impacts your endocrine system, nervous system, right? Like
Yeah.
like the production of things. Like when you look at the sunrise, when the sun is at its highest, like when the sun is setting, like that is supposed to tell your body things, right?
Yeah.
No,
and your vitamin D.
Yeah.
Like
which is like integral to the production of those. Yeah.
you don't need to take X amount of something if you can just get 15 minutes of early morning sunlight.
Yeah. Yeah.
You might still be deficient, but that's less that you need, and
Yeah, but don't worry, bro, because we got these pills that will take care of you.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
yeah, like, so, that's the thing with cannabis, like, and I'm like, why I think deschedule, right, is in its flower form or hash form, excluding critical high-pressure gas extracts, bubble hash, water hash, silk screens, sieves, rubbing it off with your hands, those, the hash and the flower have been used for, arguably 10,000 years plus, and have been used a lot by volume for a few thousand years. And there's no scientific data to suggest that it's harmful to a healthy individual. Period.
Specifically the things that aren't using chemical dyes, like you're not
Yeah.
talking about live resin,
Yeah.
right? And that also just probably wasn't available back then because there wasn't like the manufacturing process of like getting that.
Yeah, but there was hash.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, really good hash.
Yeah.
Like things that make, the strongest vape pen now seem like training wheels.
What is the difference between hash and rosin?
So like the rosins are usually pressed with heat. And so, like it's like the little like hemp or hair crimpers, like, or like hair irons.
Straighteners, yeah.
Like that was like kind of the first things they were using to make them.
Wow.
T-shirt presses, like the living legend is that like some hippie that had a T-shirt press company was like, wonder what would happen if I threw a bud in that T-shirt press, for ironing on graphics, right? Yeah. And some goo came out, and they were like, whoa.
It's fucking
smoke that
put
good.
that on paper, yeah.
No
and
way. It's because it's like it's like it's a pretty, from the science that I see right now is it could cause agitation, but the harm is only going to come from how out of hand you let that agitation get.
What do you mean by that?
Because I was curious about that, like how harmful, like the whole dab world is very new. It's brand new, considering like
relatively.
It's the timeline of cannabis
Yes.
use, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of my friends like that was like that's their thing. It's like that over, and most it's like urban a lot too because it's convenient. You know, it's way convenient. You know, it's like you can take one big dab and like the smell's gone in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Like you're set for however long that sets you up for, right?
Yep. Yep.
And so, you know, I didn't know a whole lot about the science of it, like the actual science of like what's in the product, like what is your body ingesting that you're going to have to work through,
Mm-hmm.
you know, because we have to filter these things, you
Yeah.
know. And so I did like a little research and a little dive into it, and it was like there's like I don't know if it's like hydrocarbons or you know some of the stuff that's left at this like the strongest dabs like that are going right now, like the percentages on some like the numbers, right, are like you know you've got your THC number, which is like going to be like almost 100%. You know, it's going to be 70, 90,
Yeah.
you know, 100, whatever. And then the other numbers that are looking for like terpene numbers and you know flavonoids and those things. Like the best that I've found, or like, and I say best, I mean like the strongest. Like those other numbers, you know, I'll call them, are like between 3 and 6, right? Like, and that registers, they're volatile organic compounds. Just like if you open a can of paint, just like if you're, you know, like anything that,
You're saying 3 to 6% of all concentrates
yeah,
have these like just wild card.
natural
Yeah.
cannabinoids,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
And, or 100% of them have them,
Yeah.
but they only make up maybe 3 to 6% of the material,
Okay.
right? And so, you know, because I was wondering, I'm like, we don't have thousands of years of use of this product. You know, if I'm going to use it, what is out there, you know? And what I found was that the numbers on those lower numbers are a bit, they're at the threshold of it still being okay. Like, but once like they get into like the 7, 8, 9%, then your body's going to be getting too much of some of the the carriers is you know is what I want to call
Well,
them.
so then how do you protect against that? Those numbers creeping.
It doesn't exist right now. The only way it could really exist is that if people really like the top of those numbers is still safe. Like the very best at the game right now is still slightly below those safe numbers. And I think it's kind of like a tornado to
Mm.
get like you're not just going to go from like 5 to 6 to 7. Like you're going to go five times to get to 6, and then you're going to go up six times to get to 7. You know, and so I think there's like enough time for science
Yeah.
to catch up. And you know, but when things are illegal and you're not allowed to study and you're
Yeah.
not allowed to get the funding and you're not allowed to be a participant, then, you know, we have to wait and find out, you know, but now there's been so many papers, so many white papers, you know, scientific lab studies done that like if you know the right people in the right direction to look, you can find most of the information for most of these things, these subjects. And most, you know, like most of the products until you start getting into some of the newer technology, they've got time on their side that proves that, like, you know, as an individual, it could be harmful or helpful, but like, you know, it's as a society, there's no like clear defined harm. You know, like it would be sociological
You're
or
still talking about fully natural, 100% like
yeah,
hash, rosin, flour. What about these like live resins where they're introducing like extraction via a substance like butane hash oil, things like that? I mean, where do you land with like that? I mean, because that feels to be the newest of the new, right? Like they made hash before they made butane hash
yeah.
oil, right?
If you know, if that at that point, just like any other common modern day product, it boils down to the manufacturer and the people that are making them. Like, you know, it's like, you know, Doritos or Oreos around here, Mountain Dew, right? You know, like if someone isn't doing it right along the way, everybody's getting sick. And
Ah,
and it's the same thing. You know, it's like they use vacuum, like they clean and purge and test those products. And if it's done right, it can be valuable, you know, extremely
It's
valuable.
so much fucking cheaper than fucking rosin. Like
Yeah.
live, I don't understand that. But isn't that also partially because of the like, like in volume of something like a BHO is going to furnish way more than just
Yes.
like a rosin press. Yeah,
Yes. And
which is
then,
why it's so much
and
cheaper.
propane, like, you know, I never really gave any time to any of, you know, what at this point, you know, I would still call the new hash and new extracts. You know, it's like these things, yeah, they might have been around for 15 or 20 years, but they haven't been in dispensaries.
Yeah,
They're not in multiple states. Now they are, you know.
yeah.
And and so, like, you know, super duper high clean propane, I guess, is one of the very best gases to
Hmm.
use. You know, because the way that works is like, you know, you fill up a container. You know, it's mostly stainless steel tubes, and you blast that gas through it, and you can create a closed loop system where you capture the gas, and the gas doesn't escape, and then you also capture the goo, and then they put the goo, and the goo I'm talking about would be the leftover
Yeah,
hash, right?
yeah, yeah.
And then they put the goo, or they put the hash in a vacuum oven, and they vacuum it out. So it's like you've got this, like say you've got a softball size ball of hash, when you put it in the vacuum oven, and it pulls it out to like a beach ball, and then it's pulling, the vacuum is pulling the gas particulates and stuff that are left inside the hash out. And so you keep vacuuming it and keep, you know, like, you know, little kids blowing bubbles in milk with a straw. It's just all those little bubbles, you know, and it's keep pulling it out. And then you're testing it.
After you extract the
You
gas.
keep
Yeah,
testing it. And then all of a sudden you're pure. You didn't lose anything. None of the gases escaped into the
ah,
atmosphere. It's all
interesting.
closed loop, you know, and so on a commercial scale, like that is a viable process and an option and a product,
Yeah,
right?
which that is the shit that's in all these carts and stuff, right? Like, I mean, you can get a rosin pen, but
Yeah,
the when like if I'm just saying like layman terms like cart, you're talking about live resin being mixed with the what do they mix like the distillate inside of it?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and so yeah, and it's and two, it's like, you know, like you were touching on there, it's like, so if you take, you know, and this is all my studied, self found out information
yeah,
just because I'm curious, you
yeah,
know, it's not like my passion, but it's the people that are passionate about it are so passionate about it, it's intriguing
yeah,
for me
yeah,
to
yeah.
want to know, you know, and so like a, a low grade, decent hash plant, you know, will come off like 3%, and then like a super, or like not low grade, but like a good hashing plant will be like 3%. So like if you put like 100 grams of flour into bubble bags or something, you'll get your 3% out, right? A really amazing one maybe like 6%, and so, you know, you're only capturing 6% of the volume of something at like an amazing yield. Well, like the BHO or the propane, or, you know, you're getting 100%. You know,
Yeah,
like, I mean, sure, there's got like, yeah, there's some loss. You know, let's just say 90%.
yeah, yeah.
But, you know,
Compared to yeah, three to
compared
six.
to,
Yeah,
and so like the price doesn't reflect that.
yeah.
You know, it's like the live stuff is not like 78% more cost.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I
And
mean, you could buy like I'm pretty sure you could buy like an ounce of like resin for about like a good 2 gram puck of rosin. You know.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and it's not, you know, and it's one of those things where it's like, it's you know, diamonds. Like for instance, like you can go buy a saw blade that is covered in diamonds for
Mm-hmm.
cutting concrete.
Yep.
You know, or you can go buy a tiny little ring and it's $20,000. You know, like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
how did
Yeah.
they get there? What was the step of the way? Like, you know, they're both hash, but they're not in any way equal.
Yeah.
You know, and one is semi unadulterated, and then the other one is completely 100%
Yeah,
adulterated.
semi because you're still pressing it, you're still heating it,
Yeah.
like you're not taking it off the plant, drying it, curing it, and burning it. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And like any other, you know, any steps, you know, to make it even more sustainable, you know, or it's like it's going to be more labor, more work, more, you know, time. But And that's kind of the funny thing about this is that, like, we've put, like everything else we do in society, we've put a dollar amount on it. You know, we've taken this thing that we've used to put people in jail and to make people see, demonize people, and it's okay if it's paying the taxes for the school system.
But are they? Because they took that fucking money,
No.
and where the fuck is it at?
So that was a new thing that
What
I
did they
caught.
did they address any of that in this
Yes,
bill?
they did. But then they also,
Meaning what? Like that they said they aren't going to try to pull it to the general fund. It's going to stay to the social equity stuff. Or?
yeah,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
I don't know how much. It's
Gotcha.
Ohio, so they're
Yeah.
like, well,
Yeah.
we'll give you some of what you thought you wanted.
Yeah.
And but then they were talking about, new hemp dispensaries. So it's like, we're going back in time here. It's like, this is like, to me,
Only to set up the system so that you have to go fucking apply so that they can just run the same game, right? History doesn't repeat, it rhymes. Fucking look at the playbook.
yeah.
But,
Is it $10,000? Because right now I'm a federally legal commodity that I can just go and sell to anyone on the street, period. There's no age, there's no nothing. All that shit is arbitrary to the specific substance. It's like if I'm just selling hemp flower, I can sell it to anyone who wants to buy it. And then until that's the federal law.
mm-hmm.
There's no age. Why should there be an age? Like, before this was a dollar amount, I thought we were like trying to help kids with epilepsy. I thought, that was the promise of CBD, like the whole Charlotte's Web thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather be legally alive than criminally dead. Like, and now it's, well, let's make hooch out of it. Let's take the hemp-derived THC and let's nanofracture it through a cold press process and fracture the structure of it so it becomes more easily bioavailable, and you can get high from it.
So you just explain Delta 8 again.
That's
Yeah.
Well, that's hemp-derived THC that's
Oh.
what hemp-derived THC that gets you high is. It's not that they're going to put enough in it, because if you just put enough, let's just say you put enough trichomes, just use the trichomes, no flour, just hash, just keef, right? By the time you put enough keef from hash of CBD into something to get you high, you run into a volume issue to keep it federally compliant. Like you'd have to drink 1.5 gallons of some liquid to get your 5 milligrams, or
Yeah.
But science prevails again. Someone figured out, oh, if I fracture this microscopic structure, then it becomes easily digested and stays federally compliant. Look at that. It didn't change its test. When I test it, it still says it's THCA, but it's fractured into a million little pieces that I can now absorb.
So it's I mean it's literally there, but na 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 boo boo.
And
Na 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 boo boo.
yeah.
Holy fucking shit.
And with the flower, it's the same thing as breeding. If I choose a THCA dominant variety, and like we said, the THCA in the end of the day is what gets you high,
Mm-hmm.
because as soon as you heat it up, it becomes THC. And so with the flower, Farm Bill clearly states 0.3 by dry weight. So you have two test numbers, THC, THCA on it. Combined is your total THC. And it's relative, it's not accurate, because they have to take that number and then multiply it by 0.1 something something, and it goes up or down either way, and that's how they determine whether it's something or not. It kind of reminds me of like a lot of the race tests. Like this whole thing is like 1856. Like, well, if you got a little bit of Italian, we don't want you in German village. Where it's like it's arbitrary. The numbers are so they actually mean nothing on like an individual scale.
But it's that is the talking point.
But that's it.
Because that's where they can lean
It
in on the
means
fear.
it means
fuck,
everything.
man. Yeah.
And so it's like the loopholes are, you don't need a loophole federally. If I'm breeding some, I can think of a number, like all the old classic, like early 2000 varieties, you can find them in a THCA form. where somebody pheno hunted out the right pheno and they bred that one, where in a lab test it's going to test at a good number of THCA, and therefore it's going to make it federally legal hemp. And that's what it is.
Yeah.
That's their definition. You know, like
That's
what,
great. Yeah.
you know, what is hemp?
Mm-hmm.
Whatever we say it is. That's
So you mentioned like you're waiting to get that test back. Like that test doesn't go the way you want it to. Like what happens? Like you can't sell any of the product, and then like what happens? What do you do with pounds and pounds of this stuff?
so in Ohio, we're allowed to retest.
But like if it's the same fucking product, like, were you just hoping that the like they're inconsistent and this time it goes under?
Yes.
Like if it's the same fucking product, what do you?
Absolutely. That's why it's
just
ridiculous.
retarded.
That's why it is ridiculous. And like I said, Ohio is a total THC hemp state. It is not even federally, like it's not federal. So, you know, and that's what I've learned through my studies and like listening and following like cannabis lawyers is that like it's all legal. It's just do you have enough money to fight it? Do you have enough time to fight it?
Back
Like,
to the game. Fuck the game.
yeah, you know, that's it. Like, and so in this last budget bill, Ohio voted out the hemp cultivation program. So they effectively like, you know, I don't know a lot of Ohio-based or like state-based stuff. You have like your My Ohio ID. And teachers have it. You know, anybody who's got some kind of you know, if you're involved with schools or if you're involved with the state programs or, you know, you've got your ID number and then go through, you know, the state's website,
Yep.
you know.
Yep.
Well, they got rid of it. One day, all of a sudden, like, we have this whole hemp program. We're supposed to file all of our information. We're supposed to keep records. It's all on that. We've got our own login. You know, like, I've spent 5.5 years of my life dealing with this page. All of a sudden, it's gone because they voted us out of the budget. So now I have to just email someone, and they're just basically like, they're like, we don't exist. You know, like I tried to file for my hemp sample, and this is my compliancy sample. I tried to file like on the 3rd. I said, hey, you know, can you send somebody out, you know, like the beginning of next week, you know? Nope, can't send somebody out till like the 11th or the 14th. Don't you remember we sent that email to everybody saying that you have to file 2 weeks ahead of time now before we can schedule a sample? Well, this is agriculture. This is not fucking anything else. I cannot tell you in August that my hemp crop will be done on any day. I can't tell you if it'll be alive, let alone when it'll be done.
Mm-hmm.
And then so they got rid of our program without getting rid of our program. They just got rid of all of our computer stuff and
You got rid of like the fucking avenue that allowed you to fucking be compliant. Like again, it's like fucking you don't want to play the game, but here are the fucking rules. I'm following the rules, and like you're just making it harder to do that. Take the fucking rules away. Like implement the shit or don't. But what is this like fucking la la land that that just doesn't seem that just seems unprofessional. It just inaccessible.
No one else would tolerate that.
You don't have a fucking choice.
And there's only a handful of us.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the other thing. So it's like in the past, it has been, you know, in the past, the people that I've worked with at the department, the ODA, have been great. I'll say that. You know, it's been tough because like, there again, you're asking permission from people that have no business doing a lot of this stuff to do things. But the people that I've worked with after, you know, the sniffing around phase were really kind and really generous with helping me. And I think that's mostly because they thought I was going to bring some criminal element, you know, to it because I was a former medical grower and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, if I was going to do that, why the hell would I call you, get a permit, and tell you what I'm doing? You people don't belong here.
Yeah.
You know, but.
Which is kind of like back to your, like, should the person regulated it be the person who was previously persecuting it?
No.
Same, yeah.
Never, you know.
Yeah.
But so, you know, they got rid of our computer program and stuff, and then they're getting rid of our cultivation program in Ohio for hemp. They're
What do you mean by that? The cultivation program.
so right now in Ohio, the hemp program oversees cultivation and processing, and
Cultivation is just like harvesting it from the
growing it.
ground. Oh, okay.
Growing it,
Okay.
the whole, growing it, storing it,
Start to finish.
start
Okay.
to finish, and then processing is post harvest. Are you
Yeah.
making gummies? Are you making
I
the
see.
actual processing of the
Yeah,
flower?
yeah.
And so we've got this email, saying that like as effectively, December 31st, I believe, or the 29th or something, the Ohio Department of Agriculture will no longer be in charge of hemp cultivation, and that will be going USDA.
What is okay, so then? What does that mean?
So
Well, why is that a bad thing? If the USDA is federal level, doesn't really give a shit. They just 0.3 dry weight. Is that a good thing for you then? Like,
I hated I hated the laws that they set up for us to fail. That was the deal. They set us up to fail. If the federal government would have made some big CBD thing, then the big dogs could have jumped right into the Ohio program, made a great go at it, actually utilized it, you know, made all their fake CBD medicine, and it would have been great for them. Not for us ever. Tolerable almost. Something's better than nothing.
mm-hmm.
7 years ago, I just went to prison for doing this, and now I can get a license.
Yeah.
And but so I loved having the fact that when I'm sending in my money, it's going to my state.
Yeah.
And like you said, we're just another dot on the map for the federal government, which is great in a sense of like the USDA. It's an agricultural commodity. For the state of Ohio, it's always been a problem child. They didn't want us here. They didn't want us to do it. They made up these fake ass rules. Like they made their own definition of what THC is in hemp. Period. They made up their own, and we've had to live by that for years. Now, on the product side, it's on like actual product like a gummy or an edible or a tincture or something. It's very easy to control. Like you're making your lab, you're making your product, you're checking the lab, you navigate how much more to add, how much to subtract. On your flower, it's very impossible to control.
Yeah.
Without, to a degree. Like I chose, like the genetics that I run are some of the best to keep compliancy, but it's hemp. Like all this, like other cannabinoids we were talking about, like the precursor for all of them is the CBG. The CBG can turn into whatever it wants. So if you have a CBG variety, or you have a CBD variety that has a 2%, 1% CBG in it, that CBG can convert into 5 different cannabinoids. So it could turn into 2% THC.
What would determine which one it would? Like the other environments, other levels of like cannabinoids in it? Like what?
All those things, but no one knows.
Hmm.
People that, old people that have been following the path have an idea, but like there's just too many factors like
Yeah.
that, like,
Yeah.
environment, air, quality, who knows kind of
Mm-hmm.
stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why the numbers are all like relatively, the Ohio numbers are bullshit. They were made to make sure that people like me didn't get a successful business so that I could have employees, so that I can dictate what goes on in my community because I'm investing in my community. And then therefore we're healthy and happy. Like I really feel like that is the bottom dollar on hemp. And that's how I had it explained to me at one point from a gentleman who ran around with Jack Hare. I don't know if you know the book, Jack Hare, The Emperor Wears No Clothes. He's one of the original freedom fighters for hemp. And there's a variety named after him. And, like Jack Hare, The Emperor Wears No Clothes. Like it's the book to read.
Nice.
It's the book. And I got the opportunity to hang out with a fella who ran around and sold his first some odd 10,000 copies in his car, and his opinion was that he says, he's like, well, it's like this, it's like hemp is a renewable textile and food and fuel and fiber. And recreation.
Mm-hmm.
And you can take these 2 big fat cats that sit in D.C. and you can turn them into 50 or 60 fat cats in all different towns. And then they're out in those towns, so they're going to want to rub elbows and scratch backs of the people in those towns. They're going to make those places better. And they're actually creating a product that's going to make a product in those towns that people can use. That's no good for streamlined, abusive economy. You
Right.
know,
Yeah. That's interesting. Like, what? So you have the license to cultivate, but like, do you, because it's hemp, are you also processing? Like, are you making the tinctures? Are you making the gummies? Like, you just have to cultivate it, dry it, ship it to someone else to
yeah,
do that.
yeah, we could
The
do.
latter, you're saying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and then when the state came on, they gave us, we're going to have the program, this and that. Go ahead and get your stuff. We're going to be like the surrounding states, And at the time, I'd just gotten out of growing I spent a year at the medical facility,
Overnight.
and then I got done. Started like in the April of 2018, and then ended, a year, and it was like a year and a half of like year of cultivation and stuff, and like a half a year of build out stuff. And then after I left there, I started doing consulting for hemp for with a buddy of mine in Pennsylvania.
Mm.
And in Pennsylvania, they're they're all about it. It's a farm commodity. They're all about their farmers. They're like, hemp's great. You can do a number of things with it. It's $150 for your license, and that license to cultivate, and that license also includes low-tech processing on the farm if you have a reasonable
So if you're
structure.
selling flour, you could trim the shit yourself and
And
sell
you
it.
can make extracts with alcohol and honey.
Wow.
And Ohio said, "Oh, we're going to be just like the surrounding states." Not. $500 per site to cultivate. If you have a creek that separates your field, that's 2 sites. If you have 2 greenhouses, that's 2 sites. So you already have an existing farm. So you got a couple greenhouses and a field with a creek. You need $2,000 to cultivate those 2 greenhouses in a site. On small scale economics, that's a deal breaker for a lot of people.
To yearly? Is that a yearly permit?
Annual.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the kick in the pants began. $3,000 annually to process smokable flour. $3,000 a year annually to process extracts. $750 for wholesale retail selling of products from a processor. Now I can just sell all the fucking Delta 8, anything I want out of my store because that's a federal product. And this is where the gray zones come in. Like the hemp lawyers are like, federally, you could probably just tell them, like, yeah, fuck off. What are you charging me with?
Well, dude, I wouldn't even be that. I would be less frustrated if I had any sort of confidence that there was competency behind what was happening. But why? Who's getting that fucking money? Who's fucking doing it? Like, somebody somewhere is going on their 7th out-of-country vacation.
Yeah.
Because fucking working people are paying $3,000 a year to fucking... that's what frustrates me, is that if there was if the social equity funds were being distributed and if we were seeing the park get built, like, how fucking encouraging I think that's probably part of why they're not giving the money, because they're like, God, it's going to fucking work. Like, wait a minute, putting money into these fucking parks and giving more money to these libraries to do more events and more community, like, maybe that's gonna work. Oh shit!
It's definitely gonna work.
But and then how even extra terrible will it be to blame the people that you used to call lazy stoners for all of this fucking, like, dude? It's disheartening.
That's where
It's disheartening.
And that's that's the gap, and that's the gap in 10 years. Because the people that are older than me, they're tired of it.
Yeah.
They don't, it's like, I'm generalizing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Obviously we've got our tried and true fighters for the plant.
Yeah.
But like, if you're 65, 70 years old, you are just so excited now that you can just smoke some weed and grow some. You know, like, it's been a long, hard fucking climb.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, I had a friend, her dad went to prison for 2 years because he had 2 joints.
That's so scary, man.
Like
That's
the
so
story. And like every year or two, he'd be like, "Hey, Cadillac, what do you think?" And that meant, like, sneak off somewhere, roll a joint. We're going to hit it a couple times. I really want to smoke some weed, but my God, those 2 years in prison for the weeds got me paranoid about it. But I'll take a couple puffs, And that's why, like, yeah, they're going to keep blaming, we're saving the kids, the menacing weed. No, like, you need to go to prison for putting people in prison for weed because you knew it was right. So you need to go to prison.
Which is, to me, unrealistic. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So why, like, it's, I forget what it's called, but like in South Africa, part of their culture is this concept of like, they get together, they talk about it, you did me dirty. You did me dirty. I'm done with it. You done with it? Okay, it's done. You know, and it's like, it needs to just be like that.
Yeah.
But
Give blanket amnesty. Don't let them sue, and just fucking let them out.
yeah,
Just fucking let them out.
and it's the states at this point.
Yeah.
Like they're like, Biden tried that pretend I did some weed shit when, he let all the federal prisoners out and all that fucking lies. Those were lies. There was no one got out. There was nobody. There's hardly any federal prisoners for weed compared to state
Yeah.
weed prisoners.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like it almost doesn't exist compared to how many people are in states.
Yeah.
And like the story is just that it's being used by each state for their own gain and their own
Which is also why it's such a
manipulation.
fucking big monster to kill, is because it's like like that's just the complexity of the issue, which is on par with a lot of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a plant.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be that way. And then the hemp is kind of like, it's not necessarily like, I want to say it's complicating matters, but I really feel like it's bringing to fruition the complexity of the plant and the situation, and like bringing the truth to it. Like it started out as a utilitarian material, and then the criminalization led to, I need to breed smaller, stronger plants that I can hide and get more bang for my buck. So, it like,
And that's kind of what started indoor. Do you want me to fucking close this? Bitch?
oh, it's all good. The very nature of the situation they were trying to quote unquote get rid of is what caused the thing that they see as a problem. Like there's always been good grass, right? But like not in such an abundance.
Do you think indoor is also new? Is that new kind of to what you're getting at? Like indoor, or do
Yeah.
you think that they were like, oh wait, we can control the bears, this will be better? Like that's what, like the real schnobs are like, I smoke indoor weed and I smoke extracts from outside, right? And so there's
Yeah.
like this thing in the so is that indoor thing, how much of it is like just craft people that were like, oh, we're going to be able to do better? And then how much of it was what you're getting at now, just like, fuck, we got to hide this?
It was hiding it.
More than, and then once we hit it, we were like, oh shit,
Yeah.
who knew we could do this?
Yeah. And then, breeding it to meet that environment.
Mm-hmm.
Like cannabis wants to, naturally it wants to get big. It just wants to get big. And it's like most of the weed was being grown in a closet or a basement, depending on what scale,
Mm-hmm.
like your average grow was not in a warehouse with a 12-foot ceiling.
Yeah.
So it's like what works well for growing a 4-foot, 5-foot tall plant that can handle the intensity of the light, that can handle, all the inside environment, versus the outside environment.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's a very, very, very different set of potential outcomes, like problems,
Mm-hmm.
and that like the indoor thing was like, and two, like they started looking for it.
Via like electric bills, right? Or they were
Yeah.
doing like just heat sensors. Like if there's for this size house, this is way too much electricity. Like let's
Yeah.
go look at that. Let's go fly a heat sensor in an airplane over it. Like
Yeah.
yeah,
And they kind of started using all the same stuff that they use for looking for it outside, and they started doing it with as technology advanced, the cat and mouse advanced, until there was one case in Oregon where they were doing a search warrant raid on an individual. They forgot the warrant at the cop shop, the precinct or whatever, and they were like, "Oh, it's out here. It's some Asian dude. Oh, look, there he is." And they raided the guy's house, and I want to say that like the guy actually had some weed, but it was the wrong fucking guy. It was his neighbors, and they just totally profiled him because they said the warrant was an Asian guy. That must be him. And they forgot, and they hit him with the heat seeker, like the IR scanner gun.
Yeah.
They're like, "Oh yeah, that guy's growing some weed in there. Look at those big red dots."
Mm-hmm.
And they raided him, and it was the
Because
wrong.
they didn't have a warrant, then they weren't able to actually do anything about
It
it.
was the wrong house.
Yeah. Holy
they left
shit.
the warrant.
Are you saying that's how they outed that they were doing shit like that?
No, that's how they got rid of being able to do it.
Oh.
The federal judge was like, "Yeah,
Wow.
fuck that. So you can't just use your little gun and say somebody's growing weed because look, you just raided the wrong motherfucking dude's house. What if you would have killed him?"
Which again, like, let's give credit where it's due. Like, homeboy could have just been growing the best fucking aeroponic lettuce that you've ever fucking seen in your life. But you had this you found what you were looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, it's always been that way.
Yeah.
And at one point it was so much worse. It's really bad. Now we have to search out examples for where it's awful, right?
Yeah.
Like, down in Louisiana, there was a guy who was sent to fucking 7 years in jail for like a quarter bag last year because they still got some fucked up laws.
Yeah.
Where like some odd years ago, it was a whole lot more places.
Yeah, which is you giving credit where it's due that there is still progress, albeit yet a lot of fucked up shit.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Tremendous progress.
Amazing.
Yeah.
For the state for our hemp license, right? You have to grow minimum. You have to start or put out a minimum of 1,000 seeds or plants and a minimum of a quarter acre.
And this is for tier 2 you're talking about.
No, for our hemp license.
Oh,
For the CBD.
Yeah. Okay.
And before the law, wouldn't imagine, nobody around here, short of an isolated incident, would imagine I'm going to put a quarter acre out of 1,000 plants. Like, you're going, if you would have got caught, you're fucking gone.
It's like California cartel shit. Yeah.
The numbers, the acreage is one thing. It's like you can shove 100 plants into this room, or you can spread 100 plants out over 5 acres. But the numbers, you're gonna do 1,000 fucking plants, man. That's a lot of numbers. When, I think it was in Ohio, it went the cultivation charges were 1 plant, 2 plants, 3 plants, 4 plants. And then all of a sudden the next year the state's telling me I have to have a minimum of 1,000.
Yeah.
And we're like, whoa, what?
Why are you even putting minimums on that?
So do you know what their response was? Because I asked, why do I have to have 1,000 plants? We want to make sure you're not trying to hide marijuana in it. That's weird because I thought you were trying to make sure I felt safe to try to do it. If I had 70 plants versus 1,000, it would be a hell of a lot harder to get away with growing some cherry gelato in there. It makes
with 70 plants.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, it's a fucking needle in a haystack. How many fucking pieces of hay do you want in that?
Yeah, so
that's such
ridiculous.
A stupid response.
It was ridiculous. To think if I just wanted to, do whatever and get away with whatever, that's all I'd have to do. It's I'll just find 20 acres. I'll lease 20 acres and I'll do 2 acres of it in weed. It's all just, like you were saying, I really feel like most of it is we're getting it over on these people now. There's people getting money that they shouldn't. There's people in power that they shouldn't. There's people blocking hemp so that alcohol can keep being sold. There's people in alcohol that would rather work with cannabis, but they can't because there's no regulatory framework. And now it's here we are. We're in this crossroads. And then I also got a buddy of mine who's also a hemp farmer. He didn't grow this year, but he sells. Well, he didn't flower. He'll do plants, he'll do clones. And I was like, it's like this. Like as a human, like we perceive like we're in total control. We're only in control of chaos. Nature goes on without us and thrives. And I was like, well, what about like the fact that like maybe the plant doesn't want some of this because energy works in different ways. What energy does this plant have? What, we're not giving any credit to the plant. Like what's its purpose? What's it doing? What's it doing? And it's like, well, maybe the plant doesn't want to be turned into concrete and TVs and roads and shingles. And, it's like, why, because it's all ridiculous. Like
What are you saying is ridiculous?
like that we can't just use hemp.
Yeah, well,
That
because
we can't
yeah,
like just let things work itself out, so to speak. Like they shut it down. Like they shut cannabis down. Like it wasn't like it didn't happen throughout a period of time
yeah.
because bad things were happening. You know, DuPont invented nylon at the same time that a guy invented a new hemp gem that would break hemp down. It's super labor intensive,
Mm-hmm.
as it was in the early 1900s. A guy made a machine that you could drive through and you can make fiber. Before that, you had to break it. You have to break the outside earth off to get the fiber, or the outside to get the fiber, and then you take the inside out. There's a lot of manual labor, and then plastic came along at the same time, and nylon, and they're like, get rid of this shit. Like there's a story about when they had Henry Anslinger was in charge of and the prohibition just ended. There's too many perfect situations where it's just like follow the cash cow.
Mm-hmm.
Like alcohol sales are down right now. Number one chosen drink for people that's up and coming is a hemp-based THC drink. So it's like, oh, well, look at that. We're in the state house because of issue 2, recreational weed. All of a sudden today, what do we find out? This is really about setting up a way to sell intoxicating hemp and get money for it and license it and create a control board and revenue, because everybody knows the best kind of money is forfeitures and stealing, like taking property seizures. And, it's like they've set up the regulatory framework to do their judicial work in it. Like they don't give a shit about hemp or people getting buzzed, but they're doing the citizens of Ohio a service by making it so that you know what you're getting, but what's their reason? Why are they doing it? Who are they getting rid of? How much are these permits going to be? They're making hemp dispensaries, they said. But they want to have designated hemp
Again,
dispensaries.
the fucking playbook. It's the
Yeah.
Let's yeah.
And I'm like, it's a federally legal product. Are you telling me I can have a dispensary? And this is like all I wanted to do was make CBD medicine, right? Like I've got old ladies that are like, one lady's like, she was an insomniac basically, could not sleep for whatever reason, had no reason why. For 30, 40 years, her daughter bought some of our tincture, gave it to her. She calls basically, calls her daughter crying like, I have not slept. I took this stuff and the next night I slept for the first time in 30 years. I got like 90-something-year-old church ladies that buy it. Like, it's not, that's all it is.
Yeah.
Is
What do
medicine.
they want you to say that you're? Yeah, they want to say that it's a 13-year-old coming out of middle school trying to yeah, we're protecting the kids. We don't want to, but yeah, that's not what's happening. Yeah.
And so, now it's always this like bait and switch, carrot on a string, and where it's like, so now I haven't read this bill, this new language. It may have passed, since we've been in here. It may have not. They're going to keep. There's not. It just began. Anybody out there who thinks the cannabis industry is over because like you can't hustle some black market shit in Tulsa like you used to, it's just beginning. It's the very beginning of it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like period. And so what this evening when I get home, I'm going to look into this bill, and so it's like, did they make it so that they're going to take this pure and innocent thing and debaucherize it and make it so that like I can sell you some like hooch to get high from my hemp? Like, did the state find a loophole in the federal government's hemp bill so that I can start manufacturing intoxicating products as long as I pay the state? Because that's all it seems like, And then is it unobtainable? Because like 90% of small businesses fail in 5 years. So, like what's the permit going to cost? 10 grand? Well, that's reasonable to sell stuff that gets people high because people like to get high and you'll probably make some money.
But again, what the fuck are you going to do with that 10 grand? Who are you going to give it to? Or are you just going to go on another fucking vacation on your private goddamn jet? That's the problem. Like, again, I don't have a problem at $10,000 is whatever, relative. Not only are they trying to repeat the playbook of the cannabis shit, so what are you doing with that 10 grand?
And whose business is next? Lawn mowing guys? Window washers? Roofers?
Carpenters?
Nurses? Handing 10 grand for you to operate, just in case some stuff.
Yeah.
And my buddies are getting the money. That's the deal. And then, so right now...
That I'm getting a kickback on.
Yeah, right now there should be Tier 3 craft licensed growers selling products in the state of Ohio. 36% of the money was supposed to be used for people like me who live in an economically depressed place, have the experience, live in a place where we've been highly targeted. People forget that until, maybe 10 years ago, the state found 50% of the annual fucking weed in Meigs County.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was awful. It was awful. It's like living in a police state. We call it Meigs-Ganistan.
50% of the entire state's seizure.
Yeah, would be found in Meigs. And then they'd find, 20 or 30% in Athens. Do you think that any other...
That's three-quarters of the fucking weed in the state.
You think anyone in Greene County or Stark County's got a fucking 2-acre patch next to their mansion in their cornfield? Of course they do. And then they found 13,000 some odd plants in Perry County.
Northwest Ohio.
And
that's a bunch of cornfields.
Yeah. And so then they had to start. They were forced
looking elsewhere.
They were forced to say that perhaps there's weed elsewhere.
Yeah. Oh, so I see what you're saying. It's like partially the reason that it was so high proportionately here is because that's where they were looking.
It's the only place
you
they
find
looked.
What you're looking for. Yeah.
They trained here.
Yeah. Oh.
For the like Kentucky, between here and Kentucky, this is where they train for the pilots to fly out west and.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's what the social equity money was for. Maybe not me.
Yeah.
But someone else, like me, in their position.
What you represent. Yeah. Again, a community member in a disparaged place.
Who is working with this plant.
Yeah.
Legally. Already. It meets all their boxes, And then the other folks, in our community are supposed to be getting the money through programs to help support better communities. And they took it all up and they were like, no, we want that to keep it in the general fund so that we can build prisons and train cops on how to identify cannabis. Which is
hard because it's like that now you're pushing back against funding the police, which obviously we want to do. But again, it's like, what did we agree on as a population in the state of Ohio? We voted. We agreed. We said, this is it.
Yeah,
right?
We definitely didn't say to fund them on how to incarcerate people for cannabis.
No. Quite it can't be farther opposite.
Yeah.
What could be farther opposite from like social equity? I just don't, because it's just, fuck.
Yeah. Just kind of proves that they don't care.
Yeah.
or they have an agenda.
Yeah. Probably driven by money. Yeah.
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 You know, which is fine. Just admit it. Don't, like it's the Reagan era, you know, save our children. What about the children? What about the children? What about the children? Let's talk about the children. Let's talk about how 90% of baby food just tested for like 1,000 times more the level of lead that it should have. Like, where's all this testing? Where's all the, the organic foods, like it was that to be organic, you had to be organic. All of a sudden, organic food started gaining stronghold, making, other food look not so good. I won't say bad, but then, it's like you have like OFA, which is our Ohio standard. You have Oregon Tilth, California. These are like big, they're looked at well.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, if they're certified in those, especially like the Oregon Tilth certification, right? That was organic certification. And all of a sudden, the USDA is like, oh, we're going to have a USDA certification because there needs to be a federal oversight so that everybody knows they're getting the same thing, which, awesome. We have to be able to, we need to protect consumers, right? Like should be the government's job,
Yeah.
is to protect us from ourselves and for ourselves, depending on what needs to be done. And so the government takes over, and it's okay. Now you got to be USDA. If you're a large company and you're having trouble getting stuff to make your organic cereal, you can put 5% non-organic in it, and it's still certified.
But hey, motherfucker, I'm gonna need that $500,000 license every year. Yeah. I'm gonna give you that 5%, but what I'm gonna need back, I really want to go to the Maldives this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's some nasty, just like that. There's nasty outcomes that happen with all that shit. People unalive themselves and stuff for faking paperwork, and we're talking like billions of dollars worth of grain sold at organic prices, bought at conventional, put into the stream, and then all of a sudden it's like you got health issues to deal with because you have this person with this immune disease or this person with, and they have to have that. They cannot have those poisons. They cannot have
enriched ingredients
Yeah,
and
and all
fucking
of a sudden-
bioengineered ingredients.
can't figure it out, chasing what's going on, what's wrong, So it's like back to the deschedule. No one ever. It's like somebody, like the meme this year is like, it's that time of year to remind you that nobody is going to give their dabs away to put in your kids' Halloween candy.
Drugs are expensive.
Just to remind you.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen,
Yeah.
And, like, it's just deschedule. Let us protect ourselves in our commerce by, people will call you out. There's no haters like weed haters, like it's a unique situation where like people feel entitled to be like, man, your weed sucks, or your brownies are awful, or those gummies don't work, or, like we can well regulate ourselves, and there's already laws in place for commerce, you can't misrepresent a product and sell it. So there are tools in our bat belt.
Mm-hmm.
Dude,
Kristen, Kristen was talking about that on the Cannabis Museum podcast. She was talking about like the act that, like the snake oil salesman thing, where it's like there was no proof of anything that was in your product, and then how it had to like come in and be labeled, and you can literally see shit in the Cannabis Museum that has like the whatever, like what is inside of it. It's fucking like hundreds of years old, and that is crazy.
Yeah, it's like none of this is new.
Yeah,
just how to make some dollars from us.
Yeah,
and it's like the game. Like it's a new carrot. Like as a hemp farmer, like I'm listening to this Ohio Channel Live.
Mm-hmm.
It's like Ohio Channel Live. You can watch all the hearings. If governor's got something to say, it's on there. Like it's the Ohio Channel from Ohio. You can follow all the stuff. And I'm listening to it. Well, we figured out how. It's same old everything. Through a lot of, the two main characters, through a lot of fighting, we're the Batman and the Joker, we're kind of getting along right now, and, and there's stuff I don't like, there's stuff that they don't like. Everyone doesn't like some stuff, You know, it's like, well, that's ridiculous. What about, are we talking about emotions or science? This seems emotion based. I don't fucking like.
Agenda based.
Yeah, yeah. Like, I don't like. This is not a like. This is like imprisonment. This is finances. This is economy. This is people's, stuff. And then they're like, well, and then we're going to, one thing we need to do is we need to have hemp specific dispensaries. That's what these asshats wanted since day one of the medical program. They wanted to be able to control hemp. They wanted to make a law day one, 7 fucking years ago, that said if you're selling hemp in Ohio, you had to sell it in a dispensary. Well, it's a federal product, federally legal product. There's not tire dispensaries. There's not car dispensaries. There's not shovel dispensaries. There's not hat dispensaries. There's not, it's fucking outrageous. But at the same time, I'm like, oh, I'm a hemp farmer. That would be exciting to have a hemp dispensary. I'm like, oh my God. Like, they almost got me in this. It's like, oh, I forgot. This is a federally legal product. I'm supposed to be able to just throw it out of my car at people that I see. Hey, you want some hemp? No problem. Here you go. You can have it. And it's like, Stockholm syndrome shit with this. Yeah. They create it again, and it's like, it's new, it's exciting. No, this shit is going on 7 years. They've been beating us back for 7 years, people. On
and
top
it's not
of
over.
the other 100 years. Yeah. And they're just now deciding that we're almost there, and then one guy's like, I'm voting no. This is bullshit. We already have a law. There's lots of laws. There's the USDA law. There's Ohio's law. I'm voting no. And I'm like, yeah, there you go. They're making up arbitrary numbers. You can sell 5 milligram drinks in the bar. You can sell 10 milligram drinks to go. A brewer or manufacturer may manufacture larger milligram volumes. Like, they've already got their framework. Since day one, that's what this was about.
Yeah, well, because it's like you're allowing them to produce something you're not allowing them to go, which is something I've heard, like the 5s and the 10s are what big money's interested about. And they don't want to touch the 25s. They don't want to touch the 50s. They want what they think that they're going to be able to push out to the masses. And then they're just expecting that across the board, that's probably what it's going to be, 5 and 10.
One size fits all. Yeah. Rinse and repeat, And it's like, as a consumer of cannabis, I'm like, yeah, it makes sense in some circumstances.
Yeah, but it's
doesn't make sense for a law.
Josh Crozier, fucking love Josh Crozier, posted the video sitting in the Mine Tavern and was like, let me get a double shot of Jameson, and a motherfucker just dumps it right out. You can kill yourself in a bar.
Yeah.
Like, it is impossible for you to consume. You'd probably die of fucking hydration death before you die of fucking death from consumption, psilocybin, right? Like, you cannot physically consume enough to die from it. So then I just, that it really gets me. And I thought that Josh's video was so fucking perfect sitting, right? Hey, let me get it up. But I'm not allowed to, just fuck.
That was the Joe Rogan breakthrough that he had, was they were like, yeah, dude, but this is like in your opinion. You can do, you can do a myriad of things, and his whole thing was like, oh, wait, it's like nerfing the world. It's like we got to take forks away and make a Nerf fork, like Nerf footballs. Like, we got to take anything that's, and there's this Cannabis Kim, I think, is her Instagram page.
Yeah, Cannabis Kim. Yeah, no, I think I know who you found. The dark-haired girl?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, she's awesome. And, she just posted a video a day or two ago, and it's like, I'll probably get in trouble with this one. But she's like, 3 things that are more dangerous than cannabis.
Playing football. I'm a football coach.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Dude, I played football in middle school, and it was like, I've always been tall and skinny, less skinny. You go through, phases, right?
Yeah.
And, dude, you go up against the...
you square up on the mic?
What's that? Oh, yeah. You go up against somebody on football that's 300 pounds, dude, and you're $150, you're getting smacked. That is so much more dangerous than 15 milligrams of THC than 10. The list goes, I tried to look up how many people died from aspirin, in Ohio. You can't find the information. Like, maybe if I go to, like, on a general Google search, right? Like, I didn't go to Ohio disease or poison prevention or anybody. But, like, I've watched and sent my written testimony to every single thing they've done in Ohio since it started. And they've got the poison control lady up there, and she's talking about this one case where a kid died from gummies and put in the hospital, and then they backtracked on, like, well, and then somebody was saying, they're like, no, it's like the case that they're referring to was like wasn't even had nothing to do with cannabis. It was like melatonin something, sleep aid something, blah blah blah.
Gotcha.
And but still, it's like, what's that got to do with one person had a situation, a kid? Was their parent in jail? Because they're not talking about the parent getting incarcerated, so I don't believe it. It's like the Partnership for Drug-Free America. When I was a kid, that was the big thing. It was, and that was the Ronald Reagan era stuff.
Which is like what my dare was.
Yeah. And, they had a commercial with an egg frying in a pan, and it was, this is your brain.
Yeah.
And then this is your brain on drugs.
Mm-hmm.
And then they would show a brain scan. Well, they got sued and lost a million or multi-million-dollar lawsuit because the brain scan that they showed on the commercial was the guy from a coma. They lost the lawsuit.
Shout out to whoever the fuck saw that one. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, they lost the fucking lawsuit.
That's crazy.
So
but yeah.
We're playing games with people's lives. And
well, that was just like a propaganda thing.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Straight up. Just the marijuana.
And that's what DeWine was doing with the hemp ban. This looks just like the innocent Nerds candy. Nerds candy isn't fucking innocent, dude. It is every single food coloring. I guarantee you, if you look it up, and I love, if I was going to eat some candy, it'd probably be Nerds, But, like, if you look it up, I guarantee you that every one of those food colorings is associated with a very bad disease for livers and kidneys and bladder. Guaranteed. Direct correlation, lab mice, the whole thing, The hemp part of the candy, not. Now, should they be marketed?
Consume cannabis and consume those nerds and watch what happens on either route.
And the argument for they're making the shit look, for children. I want to say that Mike DeWine probably has a solid disconnect with your average adult right now. And the things that people buy and consume and purchase, and the marketing and how things are. Now, I don't think that you should make something that looks like that, but the rest of the country, that shit is everywhere. Should we set an example? Maybe. Should we make an emergency declaration? Fuck no. Should we say that starting tomorrow you can't do this shit because I hate you hippies? Because that's how he should have finished his statement.
Mm-hmm.
It's like living over in Yellow Springs. He's from the town right over. And everybody's like, Mike DeWine's from Yellow Springs. He made it a point to say, I am not from Yellow Springs. Just so you know. I am from the neighboring town. I'm not one of them, kind of, And it's like, no, dude, you're supposed to be our governor. Like, you're not.
Yeah, you are us, motherfucker.
Yeah, you're not special.
Yeah.
In any way, other than your career politician, who has a lot of people in some powerful places, who are pulling the strings, But it was ridiculous to watch. Like, it was such a shit show.
Yeah.
Like, it was like a satire. Let me bring out this poison control lady who is, by the end of this, it will be obvious that she is so freaking nervous she is trying to hold back the lies. But she's told to say these things. So, and then we'll bring out the sheriff who is supposed to be there to support the idea that someone had a very bad situation with these gummies, and then the disease or the poison control lady spoke before him, and then he comes out and says, I'm glad you've said all that stuff because we've been trying to find the points where this information comes from, but we really can't. So I'm glad you said all that. Like, we've been looking to try to find the examples of these things that you said, but we can't find any.
He said that on record?
Yeah, like the way that's what he said. The way he said it was slightly different, but what he said was, I mean, he said, "I'm glad that you said all that because we really can't find examples of these things." And then he goes on some story about when he was a kid, they had a big rope of tobacco, and by the time and everybody was chewing it, and by the time it got to him, he was smart enough not to chew it, and he's never chewed tobacco. Like, I'm like, dude, I've invested 7 years of my life into this, and I make a federally legal compliant product that you cannot get high from without like smoking enough hemp until you're fucking tired of smoking.
Throat's fucking dry.
Yeah,
fucking
you're like, fuck this, dude. Let's go to the dispensary and buy some weed. Like, you know? And, yeah. But I think it's all about they want the regulations to make the money for the people they want.
Yeah,
to make money.
I mean, regulation is the recurring revenue. That's what it is, right? Again, like
Yeah.
interchangeable. Right?
Yeah.
Like, well, we have to facilitate this regulation, so then, yearly fee, pay up. Brad, this has been great, man.
Well,
this has been awesome.
Thank you.
Dude, you're gonna have to come back because we didn't even really talk about like the growing part of cannabis, which is again like how I met you. And one of the things I think like you said it, and I was like, this guy fucks. You were in the cannabis museum as an instructor, and you said you still learn things every time you come. And like I just appreciate that like humility, that mindset of like that was really awesome for me. And I was just like this, yeah. And so yeah, man, I appreciate the advocacy and the outreach. Like I'm glad there are people in the world doing what you're doing, man.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Me too. I'm glad you're doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
Like, it's a baller time to be alive.
Yeah. Word. So just shout out the homestead stuff. The website
Heartbeathomestead.com.
Yeah.
And you've got a website. The email's on there. Hit us up. You know.
You could get soil amendments through that. Like I mean everything
Yep.
from the homestead. Right there. Cool.
And then we're on Instagram at Heartbeat Homestead LLC.
Yep.
And yeah, I just want to help.
Yeah.
You know, we live too far out to make a big difference on like anything other than our community, right?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
that's
So
why.
talk about the first 5 minutes, dude. Worry about that first 5.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's wicked. Great. Well, maybe like if you figure out something with like those educational classes at a library or something, like just even to like come on and market that or something, or even come back after talk about how it went, it would be awesome. But
yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
This
cool.
was a blast.
Awesome, Brad. Thanks so much, man.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Cool.